Ba, 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 ba. I love it when nothing works. It's great. Is the stream back up? Yeah, it's back up. Alright, stream is back up. Fuck. Okay, I'll go back. I'll wait like another. Let me type it in streams chat. Waiting another 30 seconds, then starting video back up, just to make sure everyone's here who was watching. Russia invaded Ukraine at the time it took for the stream to come back. Yeah, it's too late. It's old news now. Doesn't matter. I agree. Yeah, I can stop watching the video. Here, let me rewind a bit. Is this AI Putin? What? What you talking about? All right, start the video back up.
Snatched this bit of Ukraine and folded it into Russia. So you're starting to see what's going on here. Putin's life's work is to salvage what he calls the greatest catastrophe of the 20th century, the division and the separation of the
Yeah, he is constantly misquoting it. Ternit is right. He says it's the greatest geopolitical. The quote is it's the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the 20th century. I bet Neon is deliberately keeping all the frames to himself. The idea that Russia's strategy and actions are the results of Putin's crazy beliefs is so fucking naive and stupid. The idea that they have no influence on Russian decision making, and that not crazy beliefs, but that the ideology behind his beliefs as the leader of an autocratic government doesn't influence their strategy and actions is also really naive and stupid.
From Russia. So let's get to present day. It's 2022.
I don't like this guy's characterization of it. Like, I can agree with criticism on that, but
his whole view on this, you have to read this. On the History of Unity of Russians and Ukrainians by Vladimir Putin, a blog post that kind of sounds like a 9th grade history essay. In this essay, Vladimir Putin argues that Russia and Ukraine are one people.
Well, sorry for that.
He calls them essentially the same historical and spiritual space. Kind of beautiful writing, honestly. Anyway, he argues that the division between the two countries is due to, quote, a deliberate effort by those forces that have always sought to undermine.
I mean, we could read the essays.
We could. The formula they use, these outside forces, is a classic one: divide and rule. And then he launches into this super in-depth, like 10-page argument as to every single historical beat of Ukraine and Russia's history to make this argument that, like, this is one people and the division is totally because of outside powers, i.e. the West. Okay, but
yeah,
listen,
fuck Putin. I'm not a big fan of Putin.
That actually
Pencil cat.
hit me in a big way. He says this: just have a look at Austria and Germany.
But I wouldn't have sex with him.
U.S. and Canada, how they live next to each other, close in ethnic composition, culture, and in fact sharing one language. They remain sovereign states with their own interests, with their own foreign policy, but this does not prevent them from the closest integration or allied relations. They have very conditional, transparent borders, and when crossing them, citizens feel at home. They create families, study, work, do business. Incidentally, so do millions of those born in Ukraine who now live in Russia. We see them as our own close people. I mean,
wait, do Canadians actually feel at home when they go into the US and have to pay $50 million for a broken bone at the hospital? Or how does that work? I'm sorry.
Listen, like, I'm not in support of what Putin is doing, but like that's like a pretty solid like analogy. If China suddenly showed up and started like coaxing Canada into being a part of its alliance, I would be little bit like, what's going on here? That's what Putin feels. And so I kind of get what he means there. There's a deep heritage and connection between these people. And he's seen that falter and dissolve, and he doesn't like it. He clearly, genuinely feels a brotherhood and this deep heritage connection with the people of Ukraine. Okay, Putin, I get it. Your essay is compelling there at the end. You're clearly very smart and well-read. But this does not justify what you've been up to, okay? It doesn't justify sending 100,000 troops to the border, or sending cyber soldiers to sabotage the Ukrainian government, or annexing territory, fueling a conflict that has killed tens of thousands of people in eastern Ukraine. No, okay? No matter how much affection you feel for Ukrainian heritage and its connection to Russia, this is not okay. Again, it's like the boyfriend who genuinely loves his girlfriend. They had a great relationship.
This fucking analogy.
But they broke up. And she's free to see whomever
Look,
she wants.
Tiernan, when I hear this, I fully understand why you hate the whole anthropomorphization of countries and stuff like that. Like, I get it, but it's not an argument to me by itself.
One in which Ukraine is actually being controlled by shadowy Western forces who are holding the people of Ukraine hostage. And if that he invades, it'll be a swift victory because Ukrainians will
open up
accept
Discord
him with open arms, the great liberator. Like, this guy's a total romantic. He's a history buff and a romantic, and he has a hill to die on here. And it is liberating the people who have been taken from the Russian motherland. Kind of like the abusive boyfriend who's like, she actually really loves me, but it's her annoying friends who are planting all these ideas in her head. That's why she broke up with me. And it's like, no, dude, she's over you.
What the hell's wrong with you? I love you, Jessica.
I mean, maybe this video should be called Putin is just like your abusive ex-boyfriend.
What the hell's wrong with you? I love you, Jessica. What's wrong with you?
Okay, so where does this leave us? It's 2022. Putin is showing up to these meetings in Europe to tell them where he stands. He says, NATO, you cannot expand anymore. No new members, and you need to withdraw all your troops from Eastern Europe, my neighborhood. He knows these demands.
I meant to say, what is this about? Is it a bad documentary?
But what he's doing is...
It's a video essay by Johnny Harris that's called "The Real Reason Putin is Preparing for War in Ukraine." So it's about why Russia has escalated aggression around Ukraine, or set up troops.
Showing a false effort to say, well, we tried to negotiate with the West, but they didn't want to. Hence, giving a little bit more justification to a Russian invasion. So, will Russia invade? Is there war coming? Maybe. It's impossible to know because it's all inside of the head of this guy. But if I were to make the best argument that war is not coming tomorrow, I would look at a few things. Number one, war in Ukraine would be incredibly costly for Vladimir Putin. Russia has a far superior army to Ukraine's, but still Ukraine has a very good army that is supported by the West and would give Putin a pretty bad bloody nose in any invasion. Controlling territory in Ukraine would be very hard. Ukraine is a giant country. They would fight back, and it would be very hard to actually conquer and take over territory. Another major point here is that if Russia invades Ukraine, this gives NATO new purpose. If you remember, NATO was created.
Did I just drop a few frames? I didn't drop any, so.
The Soviet Union was big and nuclear powered. Once the Soviet Union fell, NATO sort of has been looking for a new purpose over the past couple decades. If Russia invades Ukraine, NATO suddenly has a brand new purpose to unite and to invest in becoming more powerful than ever. Putin knows that, and it would be very bad news for him if that happened. But most importantly, perhaps the easiest clue for me to believe that war isn't coming tomorrow is the Russian propaganda machine is not preparing the Russian people for an invasion. In 2014, when Russia was about to invade and take over Crimea, this part of Ukraine, there was a barrage of state propaganda that prepared the Russian people that this was a justified attack. So when it happened, it wasn't a surprise and it felt very normal. That isn't happening right now in Russia, at least for now. It may start happening tomorrow, but for now, I think Putin is showing up to the border, flexing his muscles, and showing the West that he is earnest. I'm not sure that he's going to invade tomorrow, but he very well could. I mean, read the guy's blog post and you'll realize that he is a romantic about this. He is incredibly idealistic about the glory days of the Slavic empires, and he wants to get it back. So there is dangerous momentum towards war. And the way war works is even a small little fight can turn into the other guy doing something bigger and crazier, and then the other person has to respond.
That's called escalation.
That's called escalation. And there's not really a ceiling to how much that momentum
I can't. This video is really fucking lowbrow, dude.
Countries go to war with each other because there's kind of no ceiling. So yeah, it's dangerous. This is scary. I'm not sure what happens next here, but
pre-watched? No, I swear.
At least for now, we better understand what Putin really wants out of all of this. Thanks for watching.
The story in Russia is that the West is the ones that are provoking Russia. Yeah, absolutely. The guy is accepting as fact US intelligence claims, same as the other media pumping out hysterical headlines every day. Not quite. He didn't talk about the hysterical type headlines. So but it's definitely very the angle. There is an angle here, and it's very pro anti-Russia, whatever the fuck you want to call it. Pro-democracy. It's not a question of democracy, it's more like a question of Ukrainian sovereignty. Pro-Ukraine, I guess, you would say. To a certain extent. I mean, and I'm glad Johnny Harris acknowledges the nuance there, that Ukraine is a country, independent or not, Ukraine really is a country that is very, very, very close to Russia, and the cultural and social ties should be acknowledged as well. Which is what I was saying earlier. Like, if Crimea didn't happen, pro not invading a country because they want to join NATO, yeah. If Crimea didn't happen, honestly, I don't think Ukraine should join NATO. Neither do I think Ukraine should be a Russian puppet. I just think Ukraine should be able to have, how to put it, should be able to have measured, balanced relations between Russia and the West. Now, the only problem there is that there also is an argument that Russia has been infringing on Ukrainian sovereignty ever since 1994, right? That's the discussion we were reading about the Budapest Memorandum. So, this. It culminated for now with the Crimean invasion, but Russia has been doing fucky shit in Ukraine for quite a while. I think a lot of Ukrainian history also involves getting abused by Moscow. Yes. All right, let's check out Bad Empanada's video on this. Russian invasion imminent. The U.S. must intervene. Americans and their bootlickers are frothing at the mouth, trying to justify furthering their global hegemony. Many of them are even erroneously branding themselves as leftists. Here is an actual left assessment of the situation and the frankly ridiculous question of, do we support the global hegemonic capitalist empire?
Let's talk about Ukraine. You might have heard that Russia's definitely going to invade Ukraine. And apparently the USA has to do something about it, despite the fact that it's a genocidal global empire that is by far the most destructive country in the entire world. Apparently we need the USA to intervene. And
hey, the way I like my biases, I like to sample from... Okay, this is going to sound really fucking cringe, but I do actually like to sample from both sides of biases to make my own opinion. So, you know, we got Johnny Harris with like the mainstream pro NATO opinion. Let's dive right into some anti-NATO opinions, okay?
Save us. You know, it doesn't matter that it's a literal genocidal, insane empire that destroys the left globally, does war, coups, interference literally everywhere it possibly can.
Hey, is Stern still here?
On all the countries of the world. We definitely need the USA to police the world here.
Hey, Stern, do you think he's anthropomorphizing the US?
That happens, we need the USA. And I say that as a 100% definitely real leftist. By the way, all of that is a joke. Anyone who has that mentality is not a leftist. But anyway, let's continue. The most important thing regarding this is to ask the question of, is Russia going to invade Ukraine? What evidence is there for that claim? A lot of people have been taking that entirely at face value. Like, they see a media headline, Russia going to invade Ukraine. They read it and it's like, oh no, Russia's going to invade Ukraine. They don't connect two neurons in their brain to actually see if there's any real evidence for that. So you might be surprised to find that there's actually no evidence for that. Everything about Russia supposedly
Communism is based.
invading Ukraine comes from the US. It's the US government saying Russia's going to invade Ukraine. We can't tell you why. We don't have any sources for our claims. We have no evidence for this, but it's definitely going to happen. For example, a couple of days ago, the US said Russia is planning like a false flag attack in order to justify an invasion. What was their evidence? Well, Price did not outline what evidence the US has to support its accusation against Russia. And his terms like false flag and crisis actors, popularized among civilians by fringe conspiracy
I see you guys
theorists
are
like
really
radio
enjoying this
host
video.
Alex Jones, bristled some in the press corps who pressed the administration to provide evidence of his claims. And what evidence did the US government present? If you doubt the credibility of the US government, of the British government, of other governments, and want to, find solace in the information that the Russians are putting out, that is for you to do. So we have a wild claim here being made with no evidence by the US government. No evidence whatsoever. That alone is enough to discount this if it was any government. But it's coming from the US government.
So I wouldn't go so far. That's not enough to discount things per se. But just as we discussed earlier, the U.S. government, like it makes sense. So, it's the classic argument when you're hearing intelligence reports that they cannot give out the evidence because it's dangerous to the. It's dangerous to the people working for the intelligence agency and their sources, etc. Like that argument is legit by itself, but the US has lost a lot of credibility because it's abused this in past instances where it was like, yeah guys, we trust us 100%. This is 100% true. We got the evidence, and it turned out that the US did not actually have good evidence of it. So yeah, I would actually argue the opposite of what Empanadas is saying. From other governments, I would in general be a bit less skeptical of this if they don't have a history of falsifying reports or evidence or getting it wrong. But yeah, and I'm specifically talking about the false flag thing. Like I agree with Odin that 100,000 troops being deployed at the border is. It is what it is. Like they're minimizing that is stupid. But specifically concerning the false flag attack, I don't know. Maybe this is one of the times when the U.S. is actually the U.S. intelligence agencies are actually have actually like good intel on this. That also happened, but I fully understand why anyone would be skeptical of it.
Which is well known for making shit up. It constantly makes shit up about its geopolitical enemies with no evidence whatsoever. This is an excellent case of that. There's no evidence here. If you read shit like this and you're like, wow, Russia's definitely invading Ukraine, I don't know what to say to you, because you just don't operate on like a normal level, right? You don't operate on a level where you need actual evidence to form your beliefs. So there's no way that I can get through to you. More evidence of this. Recent BBC article. Ukraine tensions. US sources say Russia 70% ready to invade. Okay. Let's search for evidence. The US officials did not provide
Communism
evidence
is
for their
based.
assessment. Even the BBC. The US officials did not provide evidence for their assessment. Russia has assembled 70% of the military capability needed for a full-scale invasion of Ukraine in the coming weeks, US officials say. The US officials did not provide evidence for their assessment. This is where this entire narrative is coming from. The US government making baseless claims. The Russian government has said absolutely nothing to any effect to make us think that they're going to invade Ukraine. Absolutely nothing. Not a single fucking word that should make us suspect that. It's all coming from the US government based off no evidence. What are they citing as the evidence? Well, this isn't their evidence, this is the BBC's evidence. They insert this. Russia is said to have more than 100,000 troops near Ukraine's borders, but denies planning to attack. Okay? Russia has 100,000 troops near Ukraine's borders. Is that true? Probably. Now, is Russia having 100,000 troops near Ukraine's border?
Okay, turn it. NATO bases, those bases aren't troops deployed at the border. There's a difference between bases in nearby countries and troops deployed at the border. This is a really bad argument. There's a big difference between battle readiness at the border and having bases. Like, Russia has bases too. No one's complaining about that. People are complaining about the deployment.
In Russia, by the way, they're in Russia. Russian troops in Russia. Evidence of an invasion. Well, for one, 100,000 troops is not nearly enough to take Ukraine. That's less than half of the strength of Ukraine's current military. So that's obviously nowhere near enough for an invasion. They need like what, 4 or 5 times that to be safe. But this has happened many times before. Many times before. Let's do some Googling.
Wait
Anyone
a second.
can look this up. When you hear shit like this, you should be looking into them yourself. You shouldn't wait for a streamer like me.
What's the size of Ukrainian military? Obviously, that's not the only thing that matters, but okay, yeah, 215,000 military personnel. Interesting. Yeah, so they actually do have a lot of fucking troops. Following hostilities with Russia, Ukraine increased the size of its armed forces to 204,000 soldiers, not counting additional forces such as the border guards, the newly formed National Guard, or the security service. Obviously, I would expect in general that the Russian forces have a big technological advantage. But now that they're getting weapons from various Western countries, it should probably be possible to yeah, that's actually a really interesting thing Empanada brings up there. Like, if the longer Russia waits and the more weapons are funneled into Ukraine, the more this size advantage becomes important, right? The only way to compensate for a size advantage is to have force multipliers in the form of better technology, better planes, better tanks, etc., better equipment in general. If the Russian army doesn't have that, then an invasion is just not going to be possible. Russia has the largest land invasion force in terms of cavalry, tanks, etc., but the EU has air superiority. The reality is, no one's gonna declare war on Russia over Ukraine. No one. So the EU having air superiority doesn't matter. It only matters if the EU starts actually giving planes to Ukraine. You know what I mean? And like training their pilots.
To do it for you. Article from 2016. Russian troop build-up along Ukraine border raises war fears. Did they invade? No. Article from 2018. Over 80,000 Russian troops in and around Ukraine. Did they invade? No. Article from 2020. 90,000 Russian troops near Ukraine.
Yeah, this is also a really good point that Empanada is bringing up here. It is that this is something that has been happening very regularly. Russia deploys troops at the border and then engages in diplomatic pressure. It has happened multiple times already. Defense has an advantage inherently, usually anyway. Yeah, I agree. And you can do attrition guerrilla warfare as defense, which is very effective. Yes. And you can do that even with a technological disadvantage. Absolutely. I agree with that as well, Trinit. So this is a good point. This is what I was thinking in general about the situation as well. That why like in previous discussions about Ukraine, I've said that for me Putin is or sorry, Turner, let's stop anthropomorphizing. Russia is playing chicken in the sense that it wants to create tensions so it gets diplomatic leverage to obtain concessions. But at no point was I really thinking that Russia wants to go to war for the most part. Now, obviously, honestly, there's a huge bias there. I hope they don't go to war. That would be a terrible fucking outcome for everyone in Europe, including Russia, but yeah.
Did they invade? No. Another article from 2018. Did they invade? No. Russian troop buildup on western border from 2017. Did they invade? No.
Hey,
100,000 Russian
hey,
troops going to
Gooseby.
NATO's borders in
How are you doing?
2017. Did they invade? No. This has happened before, essentially every fucking year for the last 6 or 7 years or so, okay? There's nothing special about Russia having 100,000 troops on its border of Ukraine in Russia. Nothing new about that. There's no extra reason to suspect that they're going to invade now than there was before, unless you just want to take the US government at its word. The entire narrative hinges on nothing. Anyone who's accepting this is a fucking idiot. Is it possible that Russia...
Okay, no, it doesn't hinge on nothing. He just said it. It hinges on the US intelligence's word. That's what it hinges on. That's not nothing.
Might like pull a fast one for no reason that makes any sense and invade Ukraine this time? I mean, sure. It's also possible that I wake up tomorrow and I'm like a fucking fly. Two things that I think are theoretically possible. But there's no basis
Russia's
for me to think that
unhinged.
tomorrow I'm going to wake up and be a
Minority
fly.
communities down?
Like,
Wait,
there's not
what?
really
What are
much
you
of a
talking about,
basis
Space
for me
Down?
to think that this time's different to all the other times. The only reason that you're thinking that is because you've been
I
told
put
to by
Scrim's
the
chat on
media
here, so you guys
that
can
is
enjoy
sourcing
it.
all of its claims and headlines from the US and UK government and nothing more. And as I said, 100,000 troops, nowhere near enough for an invasion. What other evidence is there? We got an article from a German tabloid. Putin's coup plan for Ukraine. Explosive details on planned Russian invasion of Ukraine. Secret services already have information about the cruel puppet regime that the Kremlin wants to establish in Ukraine. A foreign intelligence service has gathered details of Russian post-war plans in Ukraine. A secret report was created from the knowledge gained by the intelligence service. And then it's fucking paywalled. Incredible. Read Putin's plans with Build Plus. Pay your monthly subscription fee. Now,
Okay, what the fuck is this? What the fuck is this? What the fuck is this newspaper? I wanna get here on I wanna. Do you know what the fuck is this newspaper? I think the problem here is that Russia does not have to do a full-fledged invasion of Ukraine. I can't imagine them wanting that. Bild is a tabloid? Okay, yeah, that's what I was thinking. This fucking looks like a tabloid, yeah. I just wanted to confirm. It's a garbage newspaper. Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. I can't imagine them wanting that because then they would have years of nasty occupation ahead of them. But taking a chunk out of Ukraine to look tough, like with Georgia, sure, why not? Possibly, maybe you like with Crimea annexing a region, that could happen. Though that would be war as well in that situation. Like like Crimea happened very fast. It was they fucking blitzed the Ukrainian army. Like Tyrannid, I'm not gonna get into your like argument with of Odin. I don't care. Don't tag me into that bullshit.
Is obviously a bullshit article. I read it before it was paywalled a couple days ago, and there's no evidence. There's no evidence at all. Just some graphics drawn up by like the graphic design team at this shitty fucking German tabloid. No evidence presented. It's like
if you don't
everything
trust
else.
the CIA, then who do you trust?
Then none of these people have any evidence
Yeah, the argument of 100,000 not being enough to conquer Ukraine seems to rely on the assumption that they want to conquer all of Ukraine. Fair on the one hand, yeah, that I agree with that. But on the other hand, what I was saying is I can't imagine the Russian army intervening, encroaching on Ukraine, and Ukraine not deploying all of its military power to defend. And you know what I mean? Like, I don't see them. I guess, like, all is maybe an exaggeration. You want to, you don't want to have, like, troops para-dropped in Kiev and taking over the capital or whatever. But like, that's what I was talking about. Crimea got blitzed, right? The Ukrainian military boats, if I recall correctly, they got all. It wasn't like Pearl Harbor, but it was similar in that they got blasted while they were still without even being fully deployed. Like, the Ukrainian military was just not prepared for what happened. Right now, they are mobilized. They are ready to go for a fight, and that, I think that makes a huge difference in their responsiveness and with the resistance that the Russian army would have to face. Digging deep into Ukraine, perfect title, makes me want to click. Good, I'm glad about that.
That Russia plans to invade Ukraine, at least not any more than they did the last 4 or 5 times they amassed 100,000 troops on the Ukraine border. There's no reason to suspect that this time is going to be different. If you've been buying this shit, like our friend here, like this fella here, war seems inevitable. Based off what exactly? Based off what exactly does war seem inevitable? Because Russia has done something that they've done 4 or 5 times before. Because the US government, providing no evidence, said that Russia is definitely going to do a false flag attack with crisis actors. Is that it? Well, I honestly don't know, because in this video...
You haven't watched the video?
Our friend here doesn't cite a single source, just brings up a map of Ukraine and talks. There's nothing there. Like, he doesn't even get to the point of citing the US government because he doesn't cite anything. There's literally no reason to believe based off the...
Wait, then play the... if you're gonna criticize this video, at least quote the video.
The evidence.
I don't know why Vosh thinks
Ukraine,
that. You can't say Vosh thinks it because this and this and then not quote the video. Because Russia has literally invaded 2 sovereign countries twice, yeah. Yeah, I was basically coming at this from the point that I'm convinced Russia does not want to conquer Ukraine, but what could be alternatives between conquering Ukraine and Putin just posturing? How can you quote quotes that don't exist? I mean, he has to, like... I don't know with that video, but I'm assuming Vosh says something to the effect of... Like, I don't know, or maybe Empanada's right. Maybe Vosh makes an entire video where he just says war is going to happen and then doesn't give a reason why. That would be really stupid, but I don't know. I don't watch Vosh videos that much, but usually he's pretty good at saying stuff, but yeah, maybe Empanada's right. I just find that very weird. If there was an unprovoked US-NATO buildup around North Korea, I'd 100% expect an invasion. Yeah, the reason why it's not necessarily an invasion is this idea. But there are arguments for or against, right? The argument here is that Putin, that Russia is posturing in order to obtain concessions from the West. That it's a negotiation tactic, which is what's happened in the past as well. Now, the counter argument to that is that the counter argument to that is that in this case, Russia's demands are unrealistic, and Russia demanding that Ukraine not join NATO, I think that actually could be a realistic concession, all things considered. But Russia demanding that NATO not ever invite any other country to join the alliance is not a realistic concession. And then to add to that, Russia demanding that NATO bases and NATO allies inside NATO countries that surround Russia be dismantled is also not a realistic concession. So there was this argument in the previous video that by making unrealistic demands, he's setting up the grounds to justify war, which I don't necessarily disagree. I don't really agree with that. Making big demands is also a negotiation tactic. That could just be like pure on Trump style negotiation of like ask more, so that once you reach a compromise, you get what you actually originally wanted. You just need to get rid of the extra stuff that's ridiculous, so you get what you actually originally wanted from your adversary in like a very adversarial negotiation. No, Vosh is good at Shapiroing. I've never had that impression really. But I like I said, I haven't watched that much of him, but usually what I've seen he's pretty good. Bargaining, yes. Negotiating, bargaining.
Now, all of this is just fucking essentially saber rattling because they're beginning to do movements. The US and NATO are beginning to do movements to try and bring Ukraine closer to NATO. A media narrative of a Russian invasion is very convenient for that because it gives them like further justification, further public opinion, essentially manufactured consent to do that. You gotta be a moron to think this is real. I'm sorry. Hopefully you've changed your mind now, otherwise you're still a moron. Hopefully in the future you'll be more careful about this. There's plenty of precedents of the US government outright fucking lying about these things. In the first Gulf War, one of their main justifications for intervening after Saddam's invasion of Kuwait was a story that Iraqi soldiers were throwing babies out of incubators.
I forgot that.
One of their main justifications for invading Iraq the next time was this idea that Saddam had weapons of mass destruction. That was false also. They made it up both times completely. I forgot about
that one. That's a good one, because earlier we were talking about the Iraq War, and someone brought up that maybe it was the first Gulf War, but I forgot that the first Gulf War also had falsified statements. Is this his alt channel? Yeah, it's Bad Empanada 2. If Russia were to get an undertaking that Ukraine will not join NATO for some significant period, I can't really see them not taking that as a win, to be honest. In my opinion, that's what Russia wants, yes. I genuinely think that's what Russia wants. If they get a commitment that Ukraine is not going to be able to join NATO, they're going to be all set. Gulf of Tonkin incident would be better. I'm not familiar with that one. I'll look it up after the video.
In Afghanistan was the idea that the Taliban were harboring Osama bin Laden and wouldn't hand him over. The Taliban offered to hand Osama bin Laden over. They invaded anyway. Now we have the USA telling you, oh yeah, Russia's going to do a false flag attack. They're going to invade after a false flag attack, making a fake video of crisis actors. And they've built up 70% of their strength on the border. Soon they're going to invade. By the way, we've provided no evidence for this, but we swear, take our word for it. You take their word for it, then you just want to believe what they have to say. And I'm sorry, but I assume if you're watching my channel, you're probably a leftist, but you're not a leftist if you believe that. You're either very stupid,
what did he say?
Or you're someone who wants left. We've provided no evidence for this. They've built up 70% of their strength on the border. Soon they're going to invade. By the way, we've provided no evidence for this, but we swear, take our word for it. You take their word for it, then you just want to believe what they have to say. And I'm sorry, but I assume if you're watching my channel, you're probably a leftist, but you're not a leftist if you believe that. You're either very stupid because it's convenient for you when they lie. So people that kind of jump the shark completely here, they're essentially taking that Russia's going to invade Ukraine as a fact without thinking that's up for any discussion at all. It's very much up for discussion. In fact, there's no basis to believe that. And they immediately moved on to these hypotheticals like, what should we do if Russia invades Ukraine? Without asking the question, why do I think that Russia is going to invade Ukraine?
If you don't trust the CIA, then who do you trust?
Because the CIA...
I really, how many times is this guy going to tell me that I have to be stupid to disagree? Yeah, I fucking hate that kind of rhetoric. This is like the previous video was really fucking tiresome because of the whole like and all that shit. But this fucking shit, dude. Like, it really gets on my nerves. Anyways, I want to respond to what he was saying. J Miles, I'll queue up your video if you want me to check it out, but I don't want to get derailed. Let's throw it in here. Cop explains how it feels to live every day in fear someone might record you brutalizing a civilian. Okay, that's Hey, what was he just saying?
What should we do if Russia is...
Oh yeah, this is actually a really bad argument from him. I'm sorry, Empanada. Having a situation where troops are deployed on the border of another country, yes, discussing all hypotheticals of what could happen and having a plan and a clear idea of what your response would be is a good thing. Now, there's a difference between planning for the worst case scenario and warmongering. Those are not the same thing. Like, what he's criticizing right here is a really stupid thing to criticize.
Invades Ukraine. Without asking the question, why do I think that Russia is going to invade?
You can ask both questions. You can ask, why do I think that Russia is going to invade Ukraine? Am I sure of it? Am I skeptical of it? But you can also ask yourself the question of what should be the reaction if Russia does invade Ukraine. Those are not. You can't ask only. Our brains can do we can do multiple things at the same time.
Yeah, then who do you trust?
Because the CIA said so. Well, as Hunter Avalon said. That's a good enough reason, right? So let's move on then to what if the hypothetical? Well, let's talk about some context that's always being left out here. In the Bolivia coup in 2019, which I'm sure most of my viewers obviously know was a coup, Evo Morales, the elected president, was forced to resign after protests in
I don't think he's saying that. He's saying it's stupid to accept U.S. government assertions as fact, which it is. That is what he's saying, but he is also saying that you're an idiot if you accept them, which I mean the main problem is the US has provided false evidence for things, but the US has also provided good intelligence on other things. It's not like you should be healthily skeptical, but always saying the US is always going to lie doesn't make much sense to me either. So he's saying believe him, not the US government. What he's saying is believe nothing's going to happen, I guess, pretty much. Believe that the status quo is going to remain as it is. That's what he's saying.
Urban centers involving copious elements of the far right, and then replaced with a right-wing president who tried to do...
And I'm not saying this to make like a both sides argument. Like I'm skeptical of the U.S. intelligence as well, but I don't. It's just that it's the reality. It's not always going to be lies. Don't they still teach expected value in school? Let's discuss these unknown accusations as truth and its implications for 10 hours, and half of it was about we as if we're part of the what? I don't know what you're talking about, Turnit. Yeah, think for yourself. I agree with you, Camilo Kitano, yes.
Blah, blah, blah. We all know the story. Same thing happened in Ukraine in 2013, 2014. An elected president was overthrown by protest, which involved very heavy far-right elements, forced to resign, forced to flee the country. This president was, he was going to sign an agreement, or he was like thinking about signing an agreement to bring Ukraine closer to the EU, but to do that, he was being asked to accept a massive IMF loan with structural adjustments. So in place of that, he started aligning Ukraine more with Russia, rather than aligning it outright with the West. That is what spurred the protests. So he was overthrown in a coup. It's a coup. He was an elected president. Doesn't matter if you think it was a good coup or not, it's still a coup. He was overthrown. He was an elected president who was overthrown by mass protests, which I'm not going to say were neo-Nazis, because they had neo-Nazis in them. but not everyone were neo-Nazis. Some of them were just normal-ass, boring liberals who are functionally right-wing, but, you know, you can't call them Nazis at least. Got to give him that. He was overthrown.
That's okay. I understand why people call him bad faith Anada. Yes, there are neo-Nazis there, so you know, and also liberals are just right-wing, so they're basically Nazis anyways, so you know. That's that was a pretty cringe argument.
With diplomatic, moral, and monetary support from the USA, which has injected billions of dollars into so-called opposition movements in Ukraine for decades. If you don't believe me, I'll show you a video of the Assistant Secretary of State for European and Eurasian Affairs at the time, outright saying that the USA has given $5 billion to the Ukrainian opposition since 1991, openly stated.
Since Ukraine's independence in 1991, the United States has supported Ukrainians as they build democratic skills and institutions, as they promote civic participation and good governance, all of which are preconditions for Ukraine to achieve its European aspirations. We've invested over $5 billion to assist Ukraine in these and other goals that will ensure a secure and prosperous and democratic Ukraine. Today, there are senior officials in the Ukrainian government, in the business community, as well as in the opposition, civil society, and the religious community who believe in this democratic and European future for their country. And they've been working hard to move their country and their president in the right direction.
Look, that's...
No. What she just said was that the US invested $5 billion in the Ukrainian government. She didn't say that the US invested $5 billion in opposition movements in support of one side over another. She did say that it was for democratic and European aspirations, but this is not what Empanada was saying she was saying.
The most generic American imperialist rhetoric you could possibly imagine. We are funneling billions of dollars to the opposition in a country in order to force...
She didn't say they were funneled to the opposition. She literally says in the video that it's funneled to the government. I don't understand this. She then talks about the opposition further on in the sentence, but it's a different part of the sentence. This is very disingenuous.
To align with our...
This is not proof
bloc.
of his...
We have the business community
what Empanada
on
is
our
claiming.
side. There's not really much more to that, okay? It's clear as fucking day. They're open about it. I don't need to invent a conspiracy because they were just open about it. So the US was supporting the protesters because, you know, the protesters were right-wingers who were protesting against aligning with Russia, which the elected president was trying to do. He wasn't trying to outright align with Russia. He was just trying to sort of play both sides because the deal from the EU wasn't very good, involving massive neoliberal reforms and an IMF loan. So after he was overthrown and forced to resign and leave the country before his mandate was over, meaning that he was overthrown in a coup, just like Evo Morales was overthrown in a coup in Bolivia in a very similar way, he was replaced with someone who was hand-picked to replace him by the USA. There is clear evidence of this. I'm not making this up. There is obvious evidence of this. Printed in the mainstream media, in the fucking BBC. This is a leaked call between the US ambassador to Ukraine and the Assistant Secretary of State at the time, Victoria Nuland, the same woman who we just heard talking, where they had a phone conversation where they handpicked who the new government of Ukraine, the new president of Ukraine was going to be. Sorry, they handpicked the prime minister, not the president. This is about the prime minister. So they're talking about, like, you know, who should be the next prime minister. The Assistant Secretary of State here says, I think Yats, meaning Yatsenyuk, I think he's the guy who's got the economic experience, as in he's a neoliberal who'll do what they want, and the governing experience. And the person who wrote this interview in the BBC says, like, an intriguing insight into the foreign policy process, what's going on all levels, various officials attempting to marshal the Ukrainian opposition. Biden was also intimately involved in this, by the way. This guy was selected personally by the U.S. State Department. Here, you know, the ambassador and the U.S. Assistant Secretary of State talk about setting up a court. Here, this guy, Marshall, the foreign policy who'll do what they want.
I think Yats is the guy who's got the economic experience, the governing experience. He's what he needs is Klitsch and Tyanibok on the outside. He needs to be talking to them 4 times a week. You know, I just think Klitsch is going. I just think Klitsch going in. He's going to be at that level working for Yatsenyuk. It's just not going to work out. Yeah, no, I think that's right. Okay, good. Do you want to set up us to set up a call with him as the next step?
And the governing experience and the person.
An intriguing insight into the foreign policy process with work going on at a number of levels, various officials attempting to marshal the Ukrainian opposition, efforts to get the UN to play an active role in bolstering a deal. And as you can see below, the big guns waiting in the wings, US Vice President Joe Biden clearly being lined up to give private words of encouragement at the appropriate moment. Link. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I should have just Googled it. Transcript of leaked Newland Piat call. An apparently bugged phone conversation in which a senior US diplomat disparages the EU over the Ukraine crisis has been posted online. The alleged conversation between Assistant Secretary of State Victoria Nuland and the US Ambassador to Ukraine, Geoffrey Piat, appeared on YouTube on Thursday. It is not clear when the alleged conversation took place. Here is a transcript with analysis by BBC diplomatic correspondent Jonathan Marcus. Voice thought to be Newland's. At the outset, it should be clear that this is a fragment of what may well be a larger phone conversation, but the US has not denied its veracity and has been quick to point a finger at the Russian authorities for being behind its interception and leak. Okay, then the voice thought to be Piat's. I think we're in play. The Klitschko, Vitaly Klitschko, one of the 3 main opposition leaders, piece is obviously the complicated electron here, especially the announcement of him as deputy prime minister, and you've seen some of my notes on the troubles in the marriage right now, so we're trying to get a read really fast on where he is on this stuff. But I think your argument to him, which you'll need to make, I think that's the next phone call you need to set up, is exactly the one you made to Yats, Arseniy Yatsenyuk, another opposition leader. And I'm glad you sort of put him on the spot on where he fits in this scenario. And I'm very glad that he said what he said in response. The US says that it is working with all sides in the crisis to reach a peaceful resolution, noting that ultimately it is up to the Ukrainian people to decide their future. However, this transcript suggests that the US has very clear ideas about what the outcome should be and is striving to achieve these goals. Russian spokesmen have insisted that the US is meddling in Ukraine's affairs, no more than Moscow, the cynic might say, but Washington clearly has its own game plan. The clear purpose in leaking this conversation is to embarrass Washington and for audiences susceptible to Moscow's message to portray the US as interfering in Ukraine's domestic affairs. Good. I don't think Klitsch should go into the government. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's a good idea. Yeah, I guess. In terms of him not going into the government, just let him stay out and do his political homework and stuff. I'm just thinking in terms of sort of the process moving ahead. We want to keep the moderate Democrats together. The problem is going to be Tyanibok, Oleg Tyanibok, the other opposition leader, and his guys, and I'm sure that's part of what President Viktor Yanukovych is calculating on all this. I think Yats is the guy who's got the economic experience, the governing experience. What he needs is Klitsch and Tyanibok on the outside. He needs to be talking to them 4 times a week, you know. I think Klitsch going in, he's going to be at that level working for Yatsenyuk. It's just not going to work out. Yeah, no, I think that's right. Okay, good. Do you want us to set up a call with him as the next step? My understanding from that call, but you tell me, was that the big 3 were going into their own meeting, and that Yats was going to offer in that context 3+1 conversation or 3+2 with you. Is that not how you understand it? No, I mean, that's what he proposed, but I think just knowing the dynamic that's been with them where Klitschko has been the top dog, he's going to take a while to show up for whatever meeting they've got. And he's probably talking to his guys at this point. So I think you reaching out directly to him helps with the personality management among the 3, and it gives you also a chance to move fast on all this stuff and put us behind it before they all sit down, and he explains why he doesn't like it. Okay, good. I'm happy. Why don't you reach out to him and see if he wants to talk before or after? Hey, this is really interesting. How about you dig deep into something that actually concerns you? We live on... Okay, Gobinist, I have news for you. There is this thing called a planet. We're all on it. We're all connected. We all have to live together. What happens on the other side of the world concerns everyone. And this is not the other side of the world. Ukraine is pretty fucking close. So we aren't under a single government. Yes, but we are a single species. We are all human beings. If you have a problem with that, I have nothing more to say. I don't care what... I don't care that you think that this doesn't concern me. It does concern me. I just said why. Everything concerns everyone. How is that related to the political machine? The fact that we're all humans? The political machine is made of humans. Besides, this idea that you can't... I can't build an informed opinion on something that doesn't directly impact me, even though it does concern me indirectly. Indirectly, it affects a lot of people, okay? But okay, it doesn't directly affect me. I can't look at it and form an informed opinion on it. Fuck off. I can do whatever the fuck I want. It impacts your ego, yeah. No offense to US lads, but after so many America-centric topics, I find it bizarre that this topic gets labeled as distant. I'm not sure I understand your sentence, Snipped. I'm sorry. I don't care. Then don't... If you don't care, then don't watch. Hey, what the fuck do you want to say? You're not gonna come in here on a topic that interests me, that I want to learn more about, and convince me to stop learning more about it because you don't care. Fuck off. But yes, I also like it started off with me reading about Macron, and I do like his efforts. Yes, like if you're covering U.S. politics, like their Supreme Court stuff or something, people wouldn't bat an eye. Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely true. Well, half the time people joining the stream would probably just assume I'm American if I'm doing that, because speaking English or whatever. Okay, one more wrinkle for you, Jeff. A click can be heard. I can't remember if I told you this, or if I only told Washington this, that when I talked to Jeff Feltman, United Nations Under-Secretary General for Political Affairs, this morning, he had a new name for the UN guy, Robert Seri. Did I write you that this morning? An intriguing insight into the foreign policy process with work going on at a number of levels. Various officials attempting to marshal the Ukrainian opposition, efforts to get the UN to play an active role in bolstering a deal, and, as you can see below, the big guns waiting in the wings, US Vice President Joe Biden clearly being lined up to give private words of encouragement at the appropriate moment. Yeah, I saw that. Okay, he's now gotten both Seri and Ban Ki-moon to agree that Seri could come in Monday or Tuesday. So that would be great, I think, to help glue this thing and to have the UN help glue it and, you know, fuck the EU. Not for the first time in an international crisis, the US expresses frustration at the EU's efforts. Washington and Brussels have not been completely in step during the Ukraine crisis. The EU is divided and to some extent hesitant about picking a fight with Moscow. It certainly cannot win a short-term battle for Ukraine's affections with Moscow. It just does not have the cash inducements available. The EU has sought to play a longer game, banking on its attraction over time, but the US clearly is determined to take a much more activist role. But you are American. Well, the guy in your Twitch chat promoting the Sigma grind set, yeah. For example, if another country is starving because of famine and not caring because it's a different country, not only would I not care, I would be opposed to sending them aid. Well, you're pretty... if you can send aid, that's a pretty ugly way of thinking. You're not a very nice person. No, exactly, and I think we've got to do something to make it stick together, because you can pretty sure that if it does start to gain altitude, that the Russians will be working behind the scenes to try to torpedo it. And again, the fact that this is out there right now, I'm still trying to figure out in my mind why Yanukovych garbled, we don't know what he says in that. In the meantime, there's a Party of Regions faction meeting going on right now, and I'm sure there's a lively argument going on in that group at this point. But anyway, we could land the jelly side up on this one if we move fast. So let me work on Klitschko, and if you can just keep, we want to try to get somebody with an international personality to come out here and try to help midwife this thing. The other issue is some kind of outreach to Yanukovych, but we probably regroup on that tomorrow as we see how things start to fall into place. So on that piece, Jeff, when I wrote the note, Sullivan's come back to me, directly to me, saying you need Joe Biden, and I said probably tomorrow for an attaboy and to get the deets to stick, so Biden's willing. Okay, great, thanks. Overall, this is a damaging episode between Washington and Moscow. Nobody really emerges with any credit. The US is clearly much more involved in trying to broker a deal in Ukraine than it publicly lets on. There is some embarrassment too for the Americans given the ease with which their communications were hacked. But is the interception and leaking of communications really the way Russia wants to conduct its foreign policy? Goodness, after WikiLeaks, Edward Snowden and the like, could the Russian government be joining the radical apostles of open government? I doubt it. Though given some of the comments from Vladimir Putin's advisor on Ukraine, Sergei Glaziev, for example, his interview with the Kommersant Ukraine newspaper the other day, you don't need your own listening station to be clear about Russia's intentions. Russia, he said, must interfere in Ukraine, and the authorities there should use force against the demonstrators. Does this statement define me as a person? Not entirely. Like, you can be a nice person to the people close to you and whatnot, but it does go to show what are the limits of your compassion for your fellow human being. You just don't care about their suffering. Yeah, it's something I would judge on, yeah. Like the only caveat is that I can fully acknowledge you can be like a really nice and good person in like your personal relations. That's something I can acknowledge. That's something that doesn't nothing you've said points for or against that. But on your stance towards people you don't know, you just gave it. You don't care. You must encounter so much frustration when an overly complicated worldview, hardly understood by the people who hold it, encounters a common sense self-benefit for you and the people around you. You must encounter so much frustration when an overly complicated worldview, hardly understood by the people who hold it, encounters a common sense self-benefit for you and the people around you. What are you talking about? Basically, you're an isolationist? Yeah, that seems to be what he's saying. Anyways, back to the video. I'm not getting derailed. So actually, just wanted to comment though on what we were reading. This is a really interesting transcript. Like getting to see behind the scenes, the whole politics and the backdoor dealings about it.
Who?
What would a country like France get out of helping Ukraine or Russia? If France chose to help Russia, it would get the benefits of being able to trade more openly with Russia, like the gas pipeline type stuff. It would probably be at a loss, because then France would face repercussions in its relations with other big partners, such as the US, several other European partners would probably look on it badly. So I doubt the benefits would outweigh the disadvantages. Now, what would France get out of helping Ukraine? I think in many ways, most of Europe sees Ukraine as, first off, a buffer between itself and Russia. But the result of that is the side you choose, not the outcome of a war if it happens. I don't think France and Russia are going to get into a war. If Russia declares war on Ukraine, no one's going to declare war on Russia. There are no diplomatic there are no defense treaties with Ukraine. No one's going to commit to a war with Russia because Ukraine's being invaded. What's going to happen is many countries are going to send weapons to Ukraine, like indirect help, but no one's going to directly intervene. I don't think that's a realistic scenario.
Wrote this interview in the BBC, says like an intriguing insight into the foreign policy process, what's going on all levels, various officials attempting to marshal the Ukrainian opposition. Biden was also intimately involved in this, by the way. This guy was selected personally by the US State Department. Here, you know, the ambassador and the US Assistant Secretary of State talk about setting up a call with the opposition to choose who would be the new PM. Blah,
yeah,
blah,
Russia
blah.
will definitely get sanctioned as well.
Well, guess who was then chosen as the new PM? The same fucking guy, Yatsenyuk. Now, what happened
Important equipment
next?
that can be used by France itself. France has a bunch of military equipment. That's not an issue. No one's this is not a zero. Diplomacy is not a zero-sum game. What France is not, the French government is not stupid enough to send to Ukraine stuff that France needs. Do you think they're daft? Do you think anyone's gonna send stuff and then be like, oh shit, we actually needed that. Oh no, what are we gonna do now? No, people are gonna send their surplus. Well, the same thing happens whether it's weapons in this case, whether it's aid in the form, like earlier we were talking about famine. No one starves their own population to feed the population of another country. The French military is in shambles. Okay, you're an expert apparently.
Well, 1 month later, IMF agrees $27 billion loan for Ukraine. The new government, handpicked by the USA, immediately realigned with the Western Bloc, with the US, and against Russia, rather than just being sort of between them, as the previous government was. The IMF immediately instituted the same sort of structural adjustments that it does everywhere. Gas prices went up 300%. The IMF straight up released a paper last year about its progress on structural adjustments in Ukraine. You know, this is what the IMF does. They give you a loan and they say, okay, we need you to implement neoliberal reforms to completely wreck your economy for us. Because that's why they give loans. We give you this money, and in return, you neoliberalize your economy so that the US can control it better, basically. That's what this is all about. This is the neoliberal imperialist bloc who are trying to bring Ukraine into their sphere, and they did. They won. You can see here.
Gabinus, you're delusional. France is not NATO American occupied, whatever the fuck that means. You're actually like if that's your perspective on the geopolitics of the relation between France and the US, you're actually delusional. France being a member of NATO does not mean it lost all sovereignty, does not mean it's occupied by the US. That is not the state of the relationship. This is your mind on Twitch chat, yeah. And well, Algeria is a what about it, but like, dude, Algeria 100%. France is responsible for lost the war first off. That's absolutely a fair point, and it was responsible for crimes against humanity. There's no denying that. It was an absolute shit show. Anyways, back to the actual subject. Gabinus, stop derailing, okay? No, if your perspective is that France is a NATO American puppet, then you have literally a delusional worldview. It doesn't correspond to reality. There is what the fuck's that emote? Even I don't derail that hard. Yeah, absolutely. Mura. I don't know what the fuck you're on, Tilgen, but hello.
They have like some of the things that they judge success by. Labor markets, for example, structural indicators related to minimum wages and other regulations that affect labor market flexibility. Essentially, they want as little labor laws as possible, as little worker protections as possible. They want an unprotected economy with no tariffs. They want the financial system to provide good access to financial services and the soundness of the banking sector and financial markets. They want to protect the rule of law and the protection of property rights. Of course, that's all they care about. This is the IMF. They're open about this. It's not a fucking conspiracy. It's right fucking there. This is an IMF document. This is the terms by which they judge the success of their loans. So what happened there is the USA interfered in another country's politics. Now, whether the actual movement was spurred by the US, I don't think so. You know, there's plenty of Nazis and right-wingers and neoliberals in Ukraine to go around. Enough to, like, you know, form a big protest movement.
Yes, Nazis and liberals,
there were enough
really the same thing.
In Bolivia to form a big protest movement, even though they technically were nowhere near being
Someone gifted me
popular.
those dope emotes.
So we have a protest movement that essentially resulted in a coup against an elected government. And that government was then replaced by a hand-picked U.S. government successor who then did everything that the U.S. and Western Bloc wanted Ukraine to do.
Intelligence can be used
thanks to the follow, Tilgen.
To suffocate and pull apart my enemy's arguments.
Okay, so actually, just considering this argument, apart from the whole like weird liberals and Nazis are the same thing, haha. I agree with Empanada's point. The transcript of the phone call is very interesting. Yeah, the post-coup government was set up with a very, very strong U.S. intervention. Basically, behind the scenes, U.S. and Russia playing a game of chess to try to control Ukraine. That seems to be basically what's been going on.
That the previous government was kind of trying to get a better deal on or to avoid. IMF, structural reforms, forced neoliberalism, the same sort of misery that we see enforced all around the world by the US and the Western Bloc. This is nothing new. It's been going on since at least the 70s. The first one was Pinochet. And that is what...
Okay, this doesn't actually... He's fucking derailed now on neoliberalism and shit. Like, I'm not necessarily a big fan of the IMF, but misery in Eastern Europe is a bit more complicated than just saying liberalism destroyed those countries. There's a few more factors to that than that. It's a bit more complicated.
Preceded the Russian invasion of Crimea. Now, the Russian invasion of Crimea, by the way, yes, it was an invasion, absolutely, but there were also, in the east of Ukraine, there are a lot of people who are sort of pro-Russian alignment. So to have a government that was sort of towing the line between them, trying to align a little bit more with Russia, be overthrown in a coup by pro-Western people, and then have it replaced with a straight-up puppet pro-Western government doing neoliberalism, it's not really that much of a surprise why it spurred separatist sentiment in majority Russian ethnicity, Russian-speaking areas. So Russia invaded to support that separatist movement. They also probably helped to spur it. That wouldn't have happened without the US interference. None of that would have happened without the US interference. It doesn't absolve Russia for their...
If he was going with military-backed coups, he should have brought up U.S. involvement in Nicaragua. He brought up Bolivia when he was talking about the coup. He compared it to Bolivia, but yeah, I mean, there's plenty of examples of U.S.-backed coups there. That, of course, but we're talking about Ukraine right here. Yeah, so many to choose from. Exactly. Like, which one are you gonna pick? You can pick a different one every day.
Invasion, because obviously they still invaded, but it literally wouldn't have happened without the precedence of the US literally fucking hand-picking a US president, funneling money to right-wing protesters, including actual Nazis. It wouldn't have happened. It doesn't absolve Russia. Obviously, Russia could have just not invaded still, but it's an excellent example of how the US meddling always makes things worse every single fucking time. If you see shit like that and you're like, the US needs to get involved to make things better, you have no ground to stand on. You're just actively ignoring the evidence to make a fucking incredibly stupid claim. So that's the background that's usually ignored.
So
here.
we've talked about this. Like, I'm not a big intervention fan in general, but we've talked about this. I think last week. There are a few counterexamples. U.S. hasn't made the situation worse every single time. I think the one main counterexample. I think there were some others. I forgot them if there were, but the main counterexample is the war in the Balkans, the Yugoslavian war, where there was a military intervention stopped genocide, and on the contrary, the region has become more stable than it was back then. The consequences have been positive for now, so I think we can look at that intervention pretty positively. So it's not every single time, I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
That's how we got to the present day situation with Crimea being essentially annexed. Now, it is true that in Crimea, Russia, being part of Russia is overwhelmingly popular, but that doesn't justify annexation, separatism, or whatever. Because there's
being part of Russia is insanely popular. There is this very okay. This coming from the guy who's saying don't trust government government declarations on things is kind of cringe. There is very strong skepticism concerning the polls that were made in Crimea, according to which the popularity of being part of Russia is like 90-something%. There are very strong suspicions that those are not the real proportions on this subject. Name on news, fair and balanced. Yeah. What are you talking about? They voted for it totally freely. Yeah. So like, look, I agree with Empanada earlier. Absolutely. Don't trust the U.S. government just because it says, yeah, there will be a false flag attack, blah 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 blah. There are reasons to be skeptical, but to turn around and be like, oh yeah, by the way, 90% of people in Crimea are pro-Russia, is really cringe. This is a really cringe take for someone who's trying to be like woke on this subject. It's also really telling. Yeah.
More to a territory seceding to a much fucking larger country than just the population. There's nothing, a minority ethnicity can live in a fucking country like Ukraine. Especially in Ukraine, Russian is dominant anyway. There's a difference between like self-determination of a smaller a smaller part of a country breaking off from the larger whole, and supposed self-determination of a small part of a small country self-determining to become a part of a much larger country. That's
literally U.S. man bad syndrome. Yeah,
there's complexities here that are very much ignored. In that,
it's like everything he just said about the complexities. Yeah, like the self-determination of parts of a country, etc., etc. That would be an argument, but only if you fully trust the polls about the popularity of having been annexed by Russia. If you don't trust them, then this whole self-determination discussion goes out the fucking window. If you do trust them, then yeah, it is a complicated subject. It becomes a complicated subject. There are arguments for and against, like various. Usually self-determination concerns more a secession than annexation by a different country. That's not something that I can't think of a historical example, but I'm sure there are. But I can't think of a single one where that actually was the issue. Every time I can think of like a region having a strong independence movement, it's almost always about secession and almost never about annexation. Da, I trust Mother Russia. Drink vodka with me. What about this one? 1991 Crimean sovereignty referendum. Oh shit, there was one in 1991. Interesting. A referendum on sovereignty was held in the Crimean Oblast of the Ukrainian SSR on 20th January 1991, 2 months before the 1991 all-union referendum. Voters were asked whether they wanted to re-establish the Crimean Autonomous Soviet Socialist Republic, which had been abolished in 1945. The proposal was approved by 94% of voters. Wait, this is saying that they want to be an autonomous republic, not that they want to be annexed by Russia. But that does go to show that they do have a secessionist independence movement. That is interesting. Was the other option staying in the USSR? The question was, do you support re-establishing the Crimean Autonomous Soviet Socialist Republic as a subject of the Union SSR and a participant of the Union Treaty? Oh, okay, so it would be an autonomous republic, but a subject of the USSR and a participant of the Union Treaty. So it would have been okay. So they would have been in favor of being an autonomous region, but part of the of a new Union Treaty of a new USSR, which never happened. So, okay, that does put things in perspective. To be entirely fair. It wasn't 91, so people are also, you know, allowed to change their mind, and maybe they have since then. It would be interesting to see if the opinions evolved since then. But yeah, this is actually really interesting. This definitely goes in the this definitely gives credence to the idea that that the people in Crimea are closer to Russia than to Ukraine. Malta wanted to be annexed by Britain as well. Gibraltar wanted to be annexed by Britain. Yeah, so what happened is to be an autonomous region of the USSR, but then a president came into power and put Crimea in Ukraine. I understand. I wonder if there were other referendums. Is the thing I'm thinking of right now. Are there any other parliamentary elections? Oh, referendums. There was a 1994 referendum. What was this? A three-part referendum held in Crimea, 1994, alongside regional and national elections. The voters were asked whether they were in favor of greater autonomy within Ukraine, whether residents should have dual Russian and Ukrainian citizenship, and whether presidential decrees should have the status of laws. All three proposals were approved. 78.4% for greater autonomy, 82.8% for dual citizenship, and 77.9% for the edicts of the President of the Republic of Crimea to have the force of law. That's really interesting. I mean, this is pretty explicit. Polling in 2008 by the Ukrainian Center for Economic and Political Studies found that 63.8% of Crimeans would like Crimea to secede from Ukraine and join Russia, and that 53.8% of Crimeans would like to preserve its current status but with expanded powers and rights. Gazumkov characterized Crimeans' views as controversial and unsteady, and therefore vulnerable to internal and external influences. The United Nations Development Programme conducted a series of polls in Crimea between 2009 and 2011 about the question of leaving Ukraine and joining Russia, with a sample size of 1,200. And consistently, the people who are for seceding and for being annexed by Russia. This is pretty explicit. It's not over 90%, absolutely. It's not over 90%, but yeah. That I have to take it back. Like, looking at this, I actually have to take it back. The Crimeans do seem to, for the most part, have really wanted to join Russia. The takeover from Russia was still illegal. Absolutely, yes. That doesn't change that. But that is... Look, this is important for me because for now, all that I've seen was the disputed referendum concerning the status of Crimea. I've seen was the referendum that was disputed, that observers were skeptical of, etc., etc. This paints a different picture. Does this justify invading another country? Not really, no. But this does paint a different picture. This is absolutely different from the polls are faked, which they probably were to a certain extent. Like 90% vote for integration is 97%, sorry, is fucking crazy when the polls are more like between 60, 70, maybe like 80% when we're looking earlier. Well, this one's 94%, sorry. But like it went down a bit since 91, right? The 94 poll was more like 80%. But there were grounds for... Let's put it this way. This wasn't a justification for Russia invading Crimea, but there was a good justification for Crimea becoming Russian. I need to acknowledge that, looking at this. You know what I mean? It should not have happened through invasion. Ideally, it should have happened through acknowledgement of the self-determination of the Crimean people, with the referendums, with the polls, etc. Yeah, but there was just a coup. It's obvious people's opinions change after that. Well, yeah. But I mean, regardless of that, it was still very... what the referendum shows and the polls is that it was still very in favor of becoming a Russian oblast, right?
Ukraine is more pro-Russian, Western Ukraine is pro-Western, so it's a country that's very much divided along those lines. But anything like seen as like remotely friendly to Russia has since 2013, 2014 been completely marginalized for this like complete alignment with the West and with the US. There's no more playing both sides. There's no more like a balance between the two imperial powers. It's just, and like the one who's being framed as the only like party that's in the wrong here is Russia, completely ignoring the history before this. Now, of course, none of that justifies the invasion, the annexation, especially not the extension of the war in Donbass. But then we get to like this narrative of Russia apparently wanting to invade more of Ukraine and take it all over. Now, that doesn't really make any sense because they would obviously get fucked up doing that, and they know that. But there's this narrative of like, oh, if it happens, the USA needs to intervene. In what fucking world does that seem like a good idea to you? In what fucking world do you live in? The USA is
the ambition of Ukraine was a bit like being Turkey, playing both sides. Yeah, and that would have been the ideal for Ukraine. We were talking about it earlier, like pre-Crimean annexation. That is really the ideal the ideal stance for Ukraine. It's to play both sides. Like honestly, Ukraine shouldn't. Ukraine in that situation probably shouldn't even join the European Union. Maybe it should sign like separate treaties, a bit like Norway or like some other, or like Switzerland. Sign separate treaties without joining the EU, so that it still has the independence to treat with Russia. Not that. Well, Germany's shown that you can be part of the EU and treat with Russia however you want, but obviously, like Western European countries also have a lot more leeway in their relations. It's not like it's a very fair thing either. Ukraine could not join the EU within 40 years. I mean, they were close to joining the EU at some point. The EU was willing with them joining. Was willing for Ukraine to join with conditions. Like there was a very real possibility of it, right?
a fucking genocidal empire, a genocidal empire that controls the entire global capitalist system. Now, I can understand a liberal being like, the USA needs to intervene, because to them imperialism seems normal. It's like the normal, like, yeah, the USA is the world place and that's good. We do good things around the world, never mind the fact that everything we do results in disaster. Because they don't see like millions of people dying to install neoliberalism as a bad thing. They see it as a good thing. So I can understand that. That's just the way they are. That's who they are. They're abominable fascists. That's normal. Then we have people like who call themselves leftists, who like identify with the US, use the collective pronoun we when talking about the US, and like, we need to do something here to bring Russia into line. We need to make them a compliant country. Are you a leftist or what? You think the USA, the West, needs to bring another country into line, into their line, into compliance with their standards? Are you fucking insane? What is
US
compliance
man,
with their line,
fascist.
their standards? Well, that means like you need to install like the most extreme version of neoliberalism.
No, there wasn't a chance of Ukraine actually joining. Ukraine would be aligned with the EU, like how Turkey is. Okay, I would have to research that more. I'm just going off of what Empanada was saying earlier in this video. But definitely would need to look into it. He was describing it as the Ukraine was really close to joining the EU. So if they had accepted certain conditions, it would have happened. But maybe he's mischaracterizing the situation. I would need to look into it. At that moment, I didn't. I've been like checking other stuff he's been showing in the video, but not that.
Neoliberalism possible. You need to take out an IMF loan. You need to open up your country to inflows and outflows of European capital. You need to privatize your national resources and sell them to us. And if you don't do that, well, we're going to try to coup you. And if we can't coup you, well, we're going to sanction you and starve your people. And if that doesn't work, well, we're going to invade you and murder millions of you, as they have combined in Iraq, Afghanistan, also through their bombing of Libya, and more recently through their support of the war in Yemen.
Okay, I get the whole like anti-imperialism thing and shit, but the US clearly doesn't have the same approach to Ukraine as it has for Afghanistan or Iraq. That being said, the whole like vying for power behind the scenes, and intervening in their politics is definitely very scummy. Like what that transcript was showing is very, very scummy. Though the only thing I would add, as scummy as it is, considering the what's his name? Considering that Russia is playing that same game, then it's just the fucking tug of war between Russia and the US to like manipulate Ukrainian politics behind the scenes. And like in that situation, I don't really have a strong opinion on. I like both should fuck off, ideally.
Mostly carried out by Saudi troops, but with crucially important US material support and diplomatic support. You know, we can go through history if you want as to what US intervention entails, as to what compliance with the US and to a lesser extent the European order entails. We can look at every single coup in Latin America, Argentina, Uruguay, Chile, Brazil, Paraguay, Guatemala, Bolivia, a million more countries that I'm forgetting there. Fascist coups backed by the USA because of non-compliant governments. Forced to install neoliberalism, leftists mass murdered, all with the cover of the US, the support of the US. While we can look at Indonesia, 500,000 plus people murdered for being leftist.
So every member within the European Union needs to be okay with Ukraine joining. A new membership can be vetoed.
Vietnam,
like how Bulgaria vetoed North Macedonia.
Grenada, support of the Contras in Nicaragua.
Yeah, that makes it more complicated.
That's what.
Wait, that makes
when you want.
Wait. I forgot about the veto thing. That means the EU is like self-regulating it's impossible for the EU to become larger than a certain amount of states, because at some point there will always be someone who's pissed off at whatever state wants to join and doesn't want to be in the union with them. That's pretty funny.
Compliance. That's
like
what you're talking
the more
about.
states there are, the more chances that any new candidate is hated by someone else who's already a member.
Now, you need to be an absolute fucking maniac to think that the USA should intervene and that it intervening could possibly make anything better in any situation. You have to be a fucking insane, bloodthirsty motherfucker. Not only does it actively make things worse whenever it intervenes, that's what it wants to do. That's all intentional. Because its goals aren't to make things better. Its goals are to pursue its own interests. You know, it doesn't want to intervene in Ukraine, doesn't want to stop Russia out of the good of its heart. It wants to do it because the shit that it wants and needs the,
it's like
the
SGG.
legitimacy that having Ukraine as an ally on Russia's border gives it.
I honestly don't think it's in U.S. interest to intervene in Ukraine. Like that's what I've been telling since earlier as well. As much as the U.S. media has been going like really hardcore on the war narrative, I genuinely don't think anyone in the U.S. government who isn't fucking insane is looking at this and like, yeah, we want to go to war in Ukraine against Russia. Yeah, that's gonna be great, dude. That's gonna be fucking awesome. I keep saying it. I think it's gonna be sanctions, and it's gonna be sending guns, and like it's gonna be sending weaponry, arming and training the Ukrainian military. It's gonna be a proxy war, not a direct war. If it comes to war. War is profitable to capitalists. Well, not to capitalists. War is profitable to the industrial military complex. Outside of the military industrial complex, war is actually the opposite of profitable. A lot of Americans think that. No, yeah, in the American population, in the U.S. population, there are people who think that. I acknowledge that. But what I mean by that is that I still have trust. I still have trust in the U.S. government that they don't buy that bullshit. That they understand that going to war would be really fucking insane. Maybe I'm naive, but I think they're pretty pragmatic about this too. It would be expensive. It would be a huge loss of life. It would be incredible deterioration of our relationship with Russia, etc., etc., etc.
Okay, so boom. We was mad at Big T for being cool with Big Bang P, but Big Bang P just linked up with China, and if I'm not mistaken, Big Bang P is one of the richest men in the world, and everybody and their mama owe China some money, so we might have an issue, but this what happened. Big Bang P was looking at Ukraine, and he like, I like that territory. It's like real close to Russia, and I feel like it belongs to us, so I'm finna come get it. So he didn't move his military close to the border, and he letting them know, like, I'm finna come get it, like, just letting y'all know, right? And so Ukraine is like, we don't know what he's gonna do. So they got their military out there teaching their citizens how to do Taibo just in case they gotta defend themselves. But some of the citizens, they like, you know what? You know, Big Bang P, he is kind of crazy, but he ain't finna bust a grape. And if he do bust a grape, guess what? America gonna come over here and help us. But my whole thing is like, I don't know if y'all forgot what happened in Afghanistan, but we was over there for over 20 years and nobody understood the assignment. So personally, I just would not put all my eggs in the American basket.
Nobody understood the assignment.
That our American military employ, and no disrespect, but y'all need to go to them continuation schools in the hood and go get you some real shooters. That's all I'm gonna say. But anyway, so Biden done hopped in, right? So Big Daddy Biden, he done hopped into the mix, and he like, look, P, stop playing with me. I know you're trying to be funny because America over here arguing about abortion rights and affirmative action during Black History Month, but I ain't got time for this right now. So if you pull up over there, it's gonna be some smoke, and you're gonna get sanctions. I'm sending you a whole receipt. Like, you're gonna have to pay this bill. And P is like, bruh, let me tell you something. By the look of the inflation in America and y'all homelessness problem y'all got over there, y'all need this money. So go ahead and send me the bill, bruh. I'll pay it in cash. And so at this point, it's out of our hands.
That's actually a pretty good analysis. That's actually not bad. The intervene people are cringe because let's be real, we didn't defend Georgia back in 2004. Why should we defend Ukraine suddenly? Yeah. Capitalists are usually contracted by governments to manufacture weapons. Yes, but capitalism is more than just military industry, like the military industry. Capitalism is like not the ideology, but like the capitalism as the system of organizing wealth is like all wealth. And there are many industries and economical sectors that suffer from war. That's all I'm saying. Obviously, war in another country is going to, not make you suffer in the same way. That's also something to take into account. Nuclear Armageddon. I fucking know we're not. I don't think anyone wants nuclear Armageddon. Okay. Hashtag Uyghurs. Is that the French term for Uyghurs or a play on words? Oh, you want me to check that out? It's, let's see, what is this? It's probably... Okay, yeah, it's the... Oh no, it's just how it's written. It's just how it's written in French. You see, Uyghur. All the Fallout fans disagree. True. It's because there's a documentary on Arte concerning called the Uyghur drama, which is probably good. Like Arte documentaries are usually really good. That first picture is not of Uyghurs. I know. I don't know what that first picture is, and knowing how weird Adrian Zenz is, Wait, is it not Uyghur? Wait. I don't know what this picture is. It could be Uyghurs. I don't fucking know. Oh, okay, I understand. He's responding to which team was rocking the coolest school uniforms, and it's like a picture of people being allegedly being being oppressed somewhere in China or something. I don't know. Yeah, it's a Zen's tweet. wide, weather effects. Okay, anyways. Fucking Zoomers forgot about mutually assured destruction. Yeah. Wait, what did I just close? Oh, this. Okay, never mind. Wide hardo. Wide walk, yeah.
It needs its resources. It needs its markets. It needs the fealty of its government. And motherfuckers like reply to that saying, oh, so America bad? Yeah, America bad. And if you agree with that, if you think America is bad, why the fuck do you think that the USA should be the one to like police the world and solve problems? What the fuck is wrong with you? What kind of leftist ideology is this that like supports like the world's global hegemonic capitalist power with complete control over the global economy and the most ridiculously huge military in the world that has proven time and time again that it's a genocidal fucking fascist installing empire? How the fuck do you see that and be like, oh, it's bad, sure, but it needs to police the world. It needs to go in there and stop the evil Russian menace. How do you think that's a good idea? It's like saying that Adolf Hitler fucking needs to intervene to fucking protect democracy somewhere. That is absolutely fucking absurd. You sound like a fucking moron unless you're just an indoctrinated liberal American exceptionalist who believes the propaganda. This is not how leftists should approach anything. The way that leftists should approach these sorts of things is, well, Russia is a small, not small, but, Russia is a minor sort of regional power, nowhere near as strong as the US, nowhere near as strong as even China. It can bully its the nations on its border, but it can't really do much else. Then we have the USA on the other side of the world, a much more extensive and much more genocidal, proven through actions, imperialist power with complete control of the global financial system, the control
This is
of
a pretty
the
small
currency,
country, yeah.
The ability to essentially destroy the economy of any country in the world whenever it pleases. When you have this situation, and it's like Russia between or like Ukraine, between Russia and that, the option...
Yeah, no, it's a minor regional power. You know, it's a like when Poland deploys troops on the Lithuanian border. You know, it's a chinchilla. I know what I need to do. I need to clip this part where Empanada is saying Russia is a minor regional power and send it to Chao for when he was saying that people are overestimating how powerful Russia is. Chao. Yeah, now I know where Chao gets his infos on Russia from. Sorry, I need to rewind. My brain's like stuck on the Russia's a minor regional power.
Global financial system, the control of the world's currency, you know, the ability to essentially destroy the economy of any country in the world whenever it pleases.
This is the thing that really bothers me. Like, I fully acknowledge, like, U.S. imperialism. It's like pretty cringe, to make a euphemism. Yeah, like, no problem with that. I don't want Putin policing the Eastern Europe either. Okay? It's okay to choose a side that you think is going to be better as far as those things are concerned.
You know, when you have the situation and it's like Russia between, or like Ukraine between Russia and that, the option that you have there, if you want to be a leftist, is very simple. You don't support either of them. You don't say either of them should do anything. You're not like, you don't say Russia should invade. You don't say the USA should get involved here and protect Ukraine or whatever either. You don't side with imperialism. It's so fucking simple. If you're a leftist, you should not see a genocidal, hegemonic, capitalist, imperialist power as a solution to the world's problems, to any problem in the world. You don't say, we, identifying yourself with that power, need to act. We need to bring this other imperialist power in line with what our imperialist power wants. That's not leftist analysis. That's liberal, American, exceptionalist, imperialist analysis. Now, make no mistake, your support doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who you say you support or not. You don't do anything. None of us do anything. Whatever happens here is going to happen regardless of what me or anyone else says. If there's anyone who deserves, like, your moral support at least, your worthless, I support this sort of thing that you want to say, it's Ukraine stuck between the world's most genocidal, neoliberal, capitalist hegemon and an aggressive, irredentist regional power. You don't say that we should support either of them. Anyone with that sort of view is a fucking moron, whether they're on the Russian side or the American side. And the response to that from the US imperialists is always, oh, so you support Russia then because you don't want to do anything about it. Now, that is a trap. It's the same talking point that was used for the Iraq.
Russia's a bit like Belgium having an issue with Luxembourg or Liechtenstein versus Andorra. Yeah, exactly. Oh no, it's Chinchilla. And why is he trying to convince people to think like him? Oof, he called you out? Wait. Who called me out? Oh, with what he just said? No, he didn't call me out. You can't not. I just addressed it before he went on this rant. I literally just addressed it. I said that yes, U.S. imperialism on principle is cringe. Now, that U.S. being imperialist in that region is not going to change whether Russia is going to be imperialist or not. So, yeah, I think I'll side with what I perceive to be the lesser evil, rather than argue that there should be only Russian influence in the region. I literally just like said that 2 minutes ago, basically.
Iraq war that's been used for every war ever. Oh, you don't support the Iraq war, so you support fucking Saddam then. Boo! Saddam supporter. Boo! Putin supporter. You don't support US intervention in Syria? Boo! Assad supporter. It's the same shit every single fucking time. If you are a sincere about being a leftist and not just using it as like a cool label, because you think it sounds cool than just calling yourself a liberal. You can't fall for this shit. It's so obvious. You can't let yourself be guilted into siding with imperialism. No.
This whole video should be called gatekeeping leftism.
Imperialism. US imperialism is far worse, but no imperialism. Like, for someone to call themselves like an anarchist or a socialist or a communist and be like, man, we gotta fucking get in there. We have to fucking get in there. We gotta get in there. We gotta send in the troops and make these fuckers compliant. That is so fucking mask off. I'm sorry, but if that's you, you're not a leftist at all. You're just a liberal imperialist.
Okay, whatever. Leftist gatekeeping or not aside, it would be really weird to hear someone I was saying, or like we were saying earlier, like wanting direct intervention is fucking insane. I feel like that needs repeating, because like he's repeating the same points. I understand that there are a lot of people arguing for that. Like I'm not gonna deny that, but like at least here in this discussion space, I don't like on this stream, I don't think anyone's defending that idea. It's okay if Syria bombs their citizens as long as it's not those dirty imperialists. I mean, yeah, that's kind of the argument. I mean, Syria was a fucking shit show, though. I would not fucking quote Syria as an example of a place where intervention led to a better outcome for the citizens than non-intervention. And obviously, we don't know what non-intervention would have happened. But honestly, if Russia does invade, I will 100% support direct intervention. Damn. I don't think there's any I just don't think that's realistic. I don't think that's in people's interest, or really, to get bogged down in a war in Ukraine. I've said multiple times earlier as well. This dude be like, you're not a leftist if you disagree with me, or just an imperial liberal. Yeah. Don't forget you're a fucking moron. Yeah. Memes aside, unironically, my girlfriend bought a ticket to Paris June 12th without me. Like, seriously, name, what's going on here? And mind you, it's just a one-way ticket. Not even me, my dude. Hey, I didn't want to tell you, Kino. I'm meeting this girl on the 12th of June. And okay, I'm joking. Okay, I don't think Ultima is watching this stream, but Jesus Christ, chill. To be frank, in Syria, I thought it was shameful and dumb the US didn't support the resistance and left the door open for ISIS and Russia to gain influence in Syria and the region. Yeah. On principle, it did seem like the resistance was the side to go with. I agree with that, but it just became like a huge shit show, and notably the fact that Russia was supporting Assad's regime made it very, very hard to decisively support the resistance as well. It didn't seem like they were really making headway, right? I don't know. It was a fucking complicated situation. And it basically, once we started getting meddled in there, it basically looked like there was no real good solution. Everything we did ended up having terrible consequences. And when you think like what were the alternatives, they would have also had like terrible consequences. Unless, I guess, like, yeah, the resistance, support the resistance, and the resistance stages a successful coup and takes control of the country. Maybe that could have happened, but maybe I don't know if that could have happened in hindsight, but definitely the pullback destroyed our relations with the Kurdish people because the U.S. hung them out to dry as usual. Yeah, absolutely. Engaging in debate in 2022. True.
To
Anyways.
identify yourself not with the global proletariat, but with the US state, with its empire, with its imperialist actions, with its control of the global financial system. That's what you're saying there. Let's watch a clip, a genocidal clip from our friend Vorsh. We're finally getting to it. This is a prime example of that. Now, for context, he backtracked after this and said that he was only saying that he wants to sanction oligarchs. But if you listen to the language here, that was clearly backtracking. What he was talking about here was not just sanctioning oligarchs, which obviously would not be enough to do what he says here. Russian oligarchs, as he calls them, don't care if the US sanctions them. They're rich in Russia. They don't care. They don't need the US. Okay? Just listen to this.
I think
geopolitical threats will change anything. I feel like the only thing we can do at this point is starve
There's the identification with the US empire. We.
Russia out.
We need to starve Russia.
he's a fucking U.S. citizen. Why would you get triggered by him saying we? Jesus Christ.
Out. We, the US empire, need to use our control, our complete hegemonic control over the global capitalist system that we have gained over the last 50, 60 years through war, genocide, coups, interference, etc., to install neoliberalism around the world. We need to leverage that against this other, much smaller imperial power and starve them out to impose our will upon them. This guy calls himself an anarchist. Nothing about that is socialist. Not even remotely. Not even remotely. That is American exceptionalist imperialism. The USA is a special country, so it should do things to other countries to bring them in line, to starve them out. You know, we have to do something. If your idea of doing something...
If you don't trust the CIA, then who do you trust?
Your idea of doing something can only possibly...
Okay, to be fair, where the U.S. Hate is coming from, it comes from the fact that the U.S. has been an imperialist hegemony that has meddled, intervened in many countries' right to self-determination, all the while virtue signaling how it was defending their freedoms, and in reality, it plundered and harmed those countries. There is a like the 20th century post like the second half of the 20th century paints a pretty bleak picture of U.S. intervention in the rest of the world. So, that is where a lot of people who align themselves with on the left politically, in general, dislike the U.S. for good reason. And also the whole like U.S. bad thing. Not meant all of U.S. history is that. Well, yeah, but before that, the U.S. was mostly just genociding natives in its own territory. It wasn't doing that in other countries. So, yeah. I even say we often when talking about Nazi Germany. Should I be worried? Maybe, yeah. Yet he does not critique Russia. He did critique Russia. He does actually acknowledge that he does actually acknowledge. Was that Big G who said that? Was Big G? Yeah. He does, Empanada does acknowledge in this video that Russia's invasion of Crimea was unjustified and is a bad thing. He doesn't wax poetic about it, but he does say it. We shows that you somehow think that you have shared interest and identity with the American ruling class. I think you're reading too much into it. It's reading that much into colloquial usages of words is plain semantics. It's not something you should actually Like you can have a discussion on it in general of like what does it change, a bit like Noam Chomsky's manufacturing consent. You can have a discussion about how the choice and usage of words reflects ideas on a general like societal level. That I would agree with, but on an individual level, like then putting that same analysis on an individual level, I think is unfair. On a societal level, sure, but on an individual level, like it's fucking semantics. It doesn't matter. Fuck me, I was gonna meme that we refers to the spooky neoliberal cabal, but Tyrannid beat me to it. Not as heavily, only to attempt to look like he takes no sides. Oh, I mean, he obviously has, he obviously takes a side, and he justified it in the previous rant by saying that Russia is a minor regional power, and that he will always side between two imperialists. He's basically believes that as a leftist, he should always side with the weaker power. That's my understanding of what he said. He said that he's always going to be side with the underdog when two bigger countries are fighting over control of a smaller country. No, he's critiquing Vosh for claiming to be leftist, but identifying himself with U.S. imperialism. Yeah, that is what Empanada is critiquing him for.
Possibly entail the fucking US empire doing something like sanctions or war. You have an irreversible case of liberal brain. You seem to not even take it as an option that maybe the genocidal empire can do nothing. That would be good. Maybe the genocidal empire could just not do anything and not do genocide. No one else thinks like this. Other people don't think like this. Only fucking Americans and
okay. Yes, there is genocide in the U.S. history. The U.S. intervening, the U.S. doesn't intervene in countries nowadays to make genocides. That's a bit of a dishonest characterization. But okay, when you have two powers, I'll always side with your mom. Nice. She needs allies. Okay. Because as a leftist, your goal is to have two imperialists instead of just one. Well, no. Apparently, the goal as a leftist is to have only one imperialist, but it's always the weaker one. The U.S. only genocides forever. Yes, there's genocide in its history, but well, yeah. Like if you take would you look at Germany, like sending troops to a country nowadays and be like, oh shit, they're gonna genocide some people. They're setting up military bases. We gotta check if they're setting up gas chambers. Like there's yes, okay. If you took the comic book from a guy from Simpsons, Bubble Bass from SpongeBob, and the creator of Thundercats Roar, and you put them in a blender along with someone with the IQ of an Xbox Live 16-year-old gamer, that's basically Vosh in a nutshell. I don't know. I don't know Vosh enough to characterize that. I don't fucking like watch his videos and stuff. My image of Vosh was generally positive, or is generally positive out of what little I've seen. He's going to explain it if we ever get there. If we ever get there, yeah. What's a good Android camera app? What do you mean by an Android camera app? German camps of any sort are not allowed to have showers, yes.
Their bootlickers think like this. It's a uniquely
yeah,
American mentality.
Russia's history is spotless,
American
absolutely.
exceptionalism. This is a big part of it. The idea that specially ordained doesn't need to abide by the standards of other countries because it's the police.
Communism is based.
It's the world police. That's what this is. Now let's continue.
Wealthier than them by metrics. I mean,
see, we are wealthier than them by metrics. He's literally just saying that the USA is wealthier than Russia by metrics. Ergo, we need to.
I don't use an Android phone, so I have no suggestions for you. But Kino says Gcam is boss. You can get it for any Android device. Here, I'll send you the link he posted in Twitch chat. I don't know. It's a random link from Kino. Maybe it's a virus. You know, he's gonna track you on your phone, but. Brave Kino. Don't trust Kino, he's a goblin. Hey, goblins can be trustworthy as well. Hashtag free Kino, exactly.
We need to use that economic power to starve them out.
Ally with all the countries in their peripheries.
Like he's literally sounds like the most insane neocon possible.
No, okay, so I don't think in this case saying Russia's history is spotless is what about or like memeing about Russia's history is whataboutism, because we're literally talking about Russia and the US vying over vying for influence over Ukraine, right? If one of the parties stops vying for influence over Ukraine, the other party will have free reign to the other party will have free reign to control the or exert influence on the country. So it is fair to look at both forces that are trying to influence the country. I 100% agree. None of them should influence the country, right? Both countries should get the fuck out and allow Ukrainians to have their own self-determination. But if both of them are going to vie for influence, then it's okay to compare the two and have a preference for one over the other. I don't think that is an insane stance. You can look at both forces vying for influence and think that one of them is gonna lead to better outcomes than the other, or maybe not. Maybe they're both just as bad. But those are things you can actually those are reasons to compare the two influences fighting there. Those neoliberal, neocon, fascist imperialists don't want to free Kino. True. Kino's being oppressed.
Ally with all of the countries
Yeah,
next to a country that is inconvenient for our regional ambitions. Bring them all into our sphere and starve them out. This is someone talking like he sees geopolitics as a game where the goal is for the USA to beat its enemies, not a fucking leftist.
Sanction their leaders, cripple their economy, wait for them to bleed out, and then
cripple their economy, wait for them to bleed out. None of that is remotely in line with his post-hoc excuse of, I was only talking about sanctioning the oligarchs. He was obviously dialing it back.
when they're ready to play ball, they can be a nice, compliant country.
Then when they're ready to play ball with the standards of the neoliberal, genocidal US empire, when they're ready to be a nice, compliant country, maybe we won't starve them anymore. This is fucking right-wing shit. Not even the average neocon will generally regulate their speech so much to not say it outright like this.
But there's a lot of civilians that get hurt in that scenario.
In eastern Ukraine as well, yeah. But
so there's a lot of civilians who get hurt in that scenario by this starving out of Russia. He acknowledges that. Doesn't seem to bother him.
If they're going to
if we
be
do the
like
sanctions
that,
on Russia, is what I'm saying. That would hurt a lot of civilians.
Any neoliberals in
not
chat?
as much as
Oh no.
Missile strikes would hurt eastern Ukrainians, right?
So you see, he's taking as like a fucking foregone conclusion that Russia is going to invade Ukraine because this is how liberals act.
Okay. He's not taking it as a foregone conclusion. It's because that's the literal context of the discussion. It's a hypothetical. It's a hypothetical of what would be the reaction if Russia invades Ukraine, and he's talking about sanctions, right? Or am I like, unless I'm completely misunderstanding the context of Vosh's discussion, that is what he's talking about. So it's not that it's a foregone conclusion that Russia is going to invade, but in the hypothetical that Russia is going to invade, he's advocating for sanctions. Those are completely different things. Having a hypothetical and advocating for that hypothetical to happen are completely different things.
Says something, it must be true. And then he's like, oh, so if Russia invades Ukraine, we need to punish Russian civilians via starvation. That's what he's saying here. He did dial it back later, as I said, but there's no way that any of this reconciles with that interpretation. He wasn't talking about sanctioning oligarchs.
Just put Neo in front of it and it sounds wrong.
About
this dude is a
neo-leftist. Kyle
Yes.
Kilinsky called him out on that, and he replied by saying, well, it certainly is better than invaded, buddy, if you sanction...
Okay, Chad, this has been quite a heated discussion between everyone. I still want to tell you all that I love you with all my heart. This is a great community, and I hope everyone here has a great week. SGGL. That is That is the message the chat actually needed. That is very cute. I approve of that message, dub. Does that mean Neo from the Matrix is bad? Yes. Neo is the ultimate imperialist. Dude, Neo militarily intervenes within the Matrix to stage a coup, to depose the architect of his power over the Matrix. Neo is the ultimate imperialist, fascist, genocidal, interventionist warhawk. I hate y'all and I don't appreciate being called to kill myself. No, that was bad. Normally in SGG, I don't have any moderator powers, but normally calling for someone to kill themselves is a bannable offense, or at least like a 24-hour mute in streams.gg. Honestly, like you were like, yeah, you were kind of being an asshole too in that discussion, Turnit, but you absolutely did not deserve to be called to kill yourself. No one deserves that, and that was fucked up. And I no, fuck everyone in here. You are all dumb. The whole week you'll have a small stone in your shoe and sand in your underpants. Awesome. What if that's my kink, Gehyun Hyug? Neo was the stronger power, and therefore he should have just sat back and not done anything. Based and neo-pilled.
In Russia, I would assume that you would be sanctioning them because they invaded, right? So you're not exactly doing harm reduction by sanctioning them. Not to mention that sanctioning a country
just
now,
like the squids slaughter
what
Zion.
is calling for there is genocide. Let me show you.
Look,
Here's
you gotta respect the squids.
Legal scholar George Bisharat, who goes over the 90s sanctions on Iraq, which were kept on Iraq even after they withdrew from Kuwait. I've gone over this before, but the way that sanctions work is, for one, they can only really work when the US does them, and especially when the US and Europe do them as a bloc, because the US control is in essentially complete control of the global economic system. So, Russia sanctioning the US wouldn't do shit. Russia's a tiny economy compared to the US. They will be hurting themselves. But the US sanctioning Russia will do huge damage to Russia, especially because...
Then I'll pay you a visit as long as I still know where you live. Many of the Zionists, actually identified as squids too. Yeah, that's okay. That's sorry. I need to watch the video. I'm focused on the video for a bit. My analogy is breaking. Yeah.
the US enforces its sanctions extraterritorially, like it manipulates other countries into abiding by its sanctions, and it usually has its allies on its side, like the other Western powers, like the EU. So the US, especially when it has its allies on its side, is ridiculously potent with its sanctions. And the sanctions on Iraq were pretty much the worst of this. Hundreds of thousands of people were killed as a result of the inability to procure medicine and food and stuff. Now, make no mistake, often sanctions say, oh, they will say things like, oh, but we have exemptions for food and medicine. That's bullshit, because if you sanction the wider economy, obviously it affects that country's ability to buy food and medicine in the first place. Those things cost money. You sanction everything but food and medicine, you're still sanctioning the country's ability to buy food and medicine. The point of sanctions...
Okay, not to mention, I need to interrupt this for a second. I did a deep dive on the effectiveness and the problems with sanctions last year. And what I found was very interesting. Sanctions also have a very, very strong chilling effects on trade for even for the things that are supposed to have exemptions. So what happens, for example, with Cuba, is that the way the sanctions are structured is that very, very few boats ever even apply for the exemptions. They simply don't. It's too much paperwork. It's not worth the hassle. So targeted sanctions are better rather than blanket sanctions with exemptions. Targeted sanctions are better. But in general, Not that I disagree with Empanada's point either. Sanctions that will affect the economy as a whole, but are supposedly letting through the other stuff, will actually affect that other stuff too. So yeah, but just to add some more arguments to this point. How did the citizens of Zion and the Matrix call themselves? Oh, so to be truly neutral, they would have to subsidize exports of food and medicine as well. Well, maybe, but then you get into a weird calculation. It's in general, it's a problem that that you kind of want sanctions to be targeted at the people who are leading the country. Not those are the ones who are making the decisions. Those are the ones that you have to put pressure on. Sanctions that put pressure on citizens are honestly. They can be effective in certain situations. In certain situations, they have worked, but they're really problematic measure. Madeleine Albright justifies the deaths of 500,000 Iraqi children as worth it. What?
We have heard that 500,000 children have died. I mean, that's more children than died in Hiroshima. And you know, is the price worth it?
I think this is a very hard choice, but we think the price is worth it.
Sanction yachts. I know, well, what you have, for example, with Russia, what a lot of people are calling for or advocating for is tracking down and freezing bank accounts that belong to influential oligarchs in Russia that are Putin's backers. Trying to hit basically his like close circle and power base directly. Can you imagine someone in 2022 going on 60 Minutes saying the price is worth it with geopolitical calculus like that? Yeah, they would get shit on. Sanction luxury brands. Admittedly, sanctioning luxury brands probably doesn't, actually hurt anyone.
To cause
Shit's fucking
suffering,
stupid.
lower living standards, hurt human beings in order to turn them against their government. That's how they work. There's no other way in which they work. In order to establish genocide, first we need to look at the intent. Now, intent doesn't mean they have to say, I am doing this because I...
And it didn't bring Saddam in line, obviously, yeah.
Or whatever. The intent can be implied from the actions. Now, obvious sanctions are sort of self-evidently damaging, right? You can imply intent to cause starvation, for example. General economic sanctions are put on a country where people already live, like, on the brink of starvation. Because then it's extremely obvious that the party that was sanctioning them would know what those sanctions would result in. Starvation. And this author, for example, sources documents that showed that the US government officials studied from the very beginning of their sanctions on Iraq what the impact of sanctions would be. One study said, Iraq will suffer increasing shortages of purified water because of the lack of required chemicals and desalination membranes. Incidences of disease, including epidemics, will be probable unless the population were careful to boil water. Another study focusing on disease occurrence in Baghdad concluded increased incidence of diseases will be attributable to the degradation of normal preventive medicine, waste disposal, water purification, distribution, electricity, and decreased ability to control disease outbreaks.
Just invest in crypto.
Tons of reports came in from third parties.
Yeah, why don't they just buy Bitcoin?
That sanctions were having and would have.
You can't sanction Bitcoin.
So they knew what was going on. They knew what their sanctions were causing. Yet they still kept them going. They knew that their sanctions were murdering people, and they still kept them in. So what intent means under the Rome Statute, which was the modifications to the Genocide Convention, which are followed in international law, that specifically applies to this, is when in relation to a consequence, that person or entity means to cause that consequence or is aware that it will occur in the ordinary course of events. Unambiguous right there. Genocidal intent sanctions, at least in cases where people are sort of living on the brink, and they'll push them over that brink, and it's known beforehand, sanctions constitute genocidal intent. Completely unambiguous. Clearly applies there. And then the author goes on to note how under 4 different statutes of the Genocide Convention. It only needs to meet 1. The US's actions in sanctioning Iraq for more than 10 years constitute genocide. The most important one here is
this is a fair argument from
attempting to
Empanada.
reduce the conditions of life of the population to the point where they
The key
or may
point
not
being that
be
the people
incompatible
deciding on the
with life, blah,
sanctions
blah,
knew
blah.
about the
This is the most
consequences
obvious one.
and had
an
calculated
explanatory
them.
note in the Rome Statute clarifies that conditions of life may include deliberate deprivation of resources indispensable for survival, such as food and medical services. That's exactly what sanctions do. He also goes on to conclude that there is, in view of all of the above, a prima facie, meaning on the face of it, like initial sort of case to be made, that US officials, in initiating and working tirelessly to maintain a program of comprehensive multilateral sanctions against the country of people of Iraq for nearly 12 years, have committed genocide. It is true that this particular example does not have the appearance of genocide in its paradigmatic popular meaning. It is genocide nonetheless under the terms of the convention. Simple. You can apply this anywhere. To Venezuela right now, to Syria, Iran, and if the US were to sanction Russia with similar...
This is a fair point from Empanada, honestly. He like, this is, I mean, it's not his point, it's the paper's point, but like it's very clearly argued. If those bank accounts are located in Siberia, they're probably already frozen. Haha. NFTs are going to take over within 1 or 2 years. We will destroy Rembrandts to turn them into NFTs instead. Oh god.
To this with similar sorts of sanctions to Russia. So what we have here is someone calling for genocide. Now you could say, well, but in Russia, you know, maybe it won't result in starvation. Maybe it will just heavily reduce the living standards of the population. Maybe only some of them will starve. Doesn't matter. If we look at the Genocide Convention, there's nothing in the Genocide Convention.
But if we don't genocide them now, Russia will genocide them more later. What? That's not what we're talking about. He's basically saying that he's basically trying to make an argument that putting sanctions on Russia as a whole would be a genocidal act. That's Empanada's argument here. Honestly, I'm not pro. Indiscriminate sanctions are problematic as well. I'm not in favor of them either. They do disproportionately hurt just the normal citizens. They aren't that effective in bullying governments to changing their stances. I too am anti-genocide. Yeah. That being said, I actually he's like saying that only a few people would die. I don't know. Russia is a weird country. Like I don't know. It's hard to tell. Are you anti-genocide? Awkward. It's hard to tell just looking at this whether Russia will be whether sanctions, like, it depends on the sanctions as well. Definitely sanctions that result in loss of life, I would 100% be against. No, anyways, I'm like, my sentence is kind of incoherent here. I'm trying to think if I have any kind of knowledge on whether sanctions against Russia would actually lead to loss of life or not. But anyways, doesn't fucking matter. I'm like, on principle, we already have sanctions on Russia. Well, yeah, but we have targeted sanctions, right? The targeted sanctions, if they're properly implemented, I'm not against. I think those are effective, or at least they make sense. What if those sanctions are against the Belgians? Nobody really likes them. Let's be real. Is it even a real country? I feel like the argument for the sanctions is on the grand scheme to push them away from geopolitical foes or behaviors, with the belief that those foes will be worse off for them or us in the long run. Well, the problem is that sanctions historically, I thought they did lead to they did lead to loss of life. Oh, okay. Sanctions in the way they're done, like what Empanada is describing here, sanctions like blanket sanctions, are they mostly just harm the citizens. And the idea is that either the government will be so sad that the citizens are suffering that they'll finally comply with the international demands, or that the citizens will be so starved and pissed off that they'll stage a coup and overthrow their government in order to implement a government that will follow the international demands. Those are the two goals that that countries want from implementing sanctions, and those are pretty fucking brutal. Like, and they don't really work. Like, authoritarian governments, they do perfectly fine with their citizens suffering. In fact, they can very easily create propaganda that creates a narrative where it's the not entirely falsely, it's the countries putting the sanctions on that are explicitly hurting the citizens, in effect preventing any chance of there being a revolution by turning the citizens against, making it an us against the world type of thing. Yeah, it's not a good sanction tactic. That's all I'm saying.
About outcome, only intent and action. So you can attempt a genocide, kill 0 people. You still committed the crime of genocide. Any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy. Nothing there about any of the following acts resulting in the effect of. Act and intent, nothing more. So calling for sanctions, as our friend Vorsh did there, specifically with the idea of like starving out a country, that is genocide. That is calling for genocide. Doesn't matter how much he backtracked later on saying, oh, I just want to sanction the oligarchs. That is a call for genocide. It's someone saying, man, the US empire needs to do something here. I know, let's genocide the Russian civilian population for the actions of their government. Unfucking believable. Same thing as I went over in a recent video on my channel is currently going on in Venezuela, in Afghanistan, especially in those 2 countries. People
Acts
are being
with intent. I don't think the
sanctions.
intent is the act
It doesn't
itself.
matter if you think.
Well, that's why he said acts with intent. Legally speaking, his argument is not wrong. If you do actions with the intent of with the intent of having an outcome that is genocide, then that is genocidal. That is a genocidal act, even if it fails to actually kill people, right? Or it's attempted genocide. It's like attempted murder. It's attempted genocide. This is a leap that Vosh is calling for genocide. Yeah, well, yeah. Vosh, I don't think Vosh has the intent, especially since Vosh says sanctions, but he doesn't really specify sanctions against, is it this targeted sanctions against the Russian oligarchs, or is it blanket sanctions that are gonna, like Empanada said, are gonna hurt the Russian people? In that clip, Vosh doesn't really describe what he's advocating for, so it could be fair to also give him the benefit of the doubt before saying he's calling for genocide. Going to learn how to really starve the economy. Only target workers. Okay, that was a good meme. Nip. Oh no.
Oh, the government sucks. It's mostly their fault. Blah blah blah. If the government sucks and is doing things badly, you don't put sanctions on them to make things even worse, because you're just gonna hurt people even more. There's only one stance to take here. You don't side with any imperial power. Now, I don't think Russia is going to invade Ukraine because there's no fucking evidence for that whatsoever. But if they did, I would hope that Russia could defend itself from Ukraine. That Ukraine could defend itself from Russia. Ah, Freudian slip. Thank you for the check, Putin. You know, maybe Ukraine could get some help from its smaller regional neighbors, but certainly not from the imperial neoliberal USA, so that the USA can send troops there or whatever, or sanction Russia or whatever, and then if they win, continue to turn Ukraine into a neoliberal hellhole, aligned with their Western genocidal project, with even more impunity than they already have now. If you live in the USA, your only
when
hope
he says
could
Western
be...
genocidal project, you know what I think of? I think of the fucking Great Replacement thing. Like the fucking, like at this point he sounds like a fucking white supremacist, being like the Western multicultural genocide agenda. It's like, fuck, dude. Fuck.
That the US empire
are all those Eastern European nations, which grew very rapidly in the last few decades, also neoliberal hellholes? Yeah, yeah, I'm not even getting into that. But yes, apparently. Apparently there has never been any good outcomes from Eastern European countries complying with joining the EU and all that. So Bad Empanada is advocating for genocide. He wants to send weaker and worse equipped fighters to fight a country that has the technology advantage. No, he's advocating for, well, I get your point. You're trying to like flip the argument around. Yeah, anyways.
Fucking falls and destroys itself. Not that it needs to expand its influence around the world, even against another imperial power. Are you fucking crazy? Do you want the USA to be able to do more Iraq wars? If you want the USA to be able to enforce its will more around the world, to be able to completely destroy left movements everywhere, to do more Bolivia coups, more Operation Condors, more Iraq invasions, more Afghanistan invasions, more Yemen invasions, more Libya interventions, more, you know, sanctions on Afghanistan, on Venezuela, on Syria, on Iran, on Yemen. If you want them to be able to do more of that, then by all means, support them. Support everything they do. Yes, get in there. Get in fucking Ukraine, Joe Biden. Send in the fucking troops. Start World War III.
Okay,
maybe.
Dude, since we're on this tip, holy fucking shit! Jack Ryan is such a cringe TV show. You realize, like, since we're on this whole like arc of like exploring this lefty shit, have any of you seen season 2 of Jack Ryan? Anyone who hasn't seen the season 2 of Jack Ryan, let me just summarize it. Spoilers incoming. Watch out. I'm a neat, not an analyst. Like, season 2 of Jack Ryan, it's a TV show based on some Tom Clancy books. Season 2 of Jack Ryan has the CIA. Jack Ryan is like a CIA guy. It basically has the CIA intervene in a fictional South American country. The CIA intervenes in this fictional South American company in order to support the pro-democracy, progressive like social democrat candidate versus the authoritarian far right anti-democratic despot. The CIA intervenes in a South American country. Yeah, that's the one with Jim face. Yes, the CIA. Like, the plot is that the CIA intervenes in a South American country to help like a lefty democratic candidate against. Again, it's a fucking fiction. It's fucking insane one. It's the I Can't Go to Yemen one. The first season is about Yemen. That's where the I Can't Go to Yemen clip is from. And the second season is about this fucking insane alternate reality South America plot.
Afterwards, in the rubble of the world, the USA will have gained a little bit of hegemony and be able to do more wars and coups and the destruction of the global left even better. You know, maybe they'll get some structural reforms so you can compete in the labor market or whatever, as the IMF likes to say. But don't call yourself a fucking leftist while doing that, please. You're not. You're just a fucking liberal imperialist at best, a far-right imperialist at worst. If you're in the USA, you're obligated to oppose your country's imperialism unequivocally. And yes, this is imperialism. Nothing that the US does in the world stage is not part of its imperialist agenda. If you're from Russia, your principal role as a leftist is to oppose everything that your government does to other countries. Exactly the same. The only difference between those two is that the US does far more and far worse. I want to address one more thing before ending this awful stream. That, like, Ukraine isn't a Nazi's talking point. It's absolutely true. There are a lot of Nazis in Ukraine. Now, this is a consequence of the neoliberal turn since the 70s, which, by the direction of the US from its very beginning, involved a lot of liberal fascist alliances, starting in Latin America, in Argentina, Chile, everywhere. The very first implementations of neoliberalism were done by fascists.
I feel like this misrepresents Eastern like this is something I say with great sadness, but this misrepresents Eastern European culture. The fascism, well, not fascism, but anti-Semitism, racism, hyper-nationalism, those have been problems in Eastern European countries for centuries. Those aren't things that that have been rising since the 70s because of U.S. intervention. Those are problems in Eastern European countries and have been for a very, very long time. I strongly disagree with Empanada's portrayal of this.
With the overwhelming support of so-called liberal Democrats the world over, because they like the economics that they implemented. And this resulted in a lot of fascists around the world, a lot of neo-Nazis even around the world.
Like, fuck, sorry, I'm interrupting again. Like, I can't speak for Ukraine specifically. I don't know that much of its history, but fucking hell. Look, I'm from Poland. Like, my family's from Poland. Poland collaborated with the Nazis. Those people were considered, the Polish people were considered an inferior race by the Nazis, and they still thought, oh fuck, those guys hate Jews too? Let's fucking help them, dude. Let's go. Let's fucking help him kill some Jews, dude. I fucking hate my Jewish neighbor. That's the state of like far right politics in Eastern Europe. That predates the 1970s. Call him a dumb fuck. Ooh.
Becoming at least okay with neoliberals, if not neoliberals themselves, like a fascist brand of neoliberalism.
Baltic states were insane with collaborations on killing Jews. Dude, fuck, France collaborated too. A lot of Europe collaborated, but anyways, I'm saying this specifically because this idea that Ukraine has a neo-Nazi problem because of like Western neoliberal influence, I don't agree with that. That doesn't fit in with my understanding of the neo-Nazi problems in Eastern Europe at all. Which is a real thing. There is a real problem with the far right movements in Eastern Europe.
So I'm not denying that. You have the consequences of that, which is a coalition between neoliberals and fascists. And outright fascists and outright neo-Nazis. There's neo-Nazis in the government, though not...
And as well, like, Neyman on Jews, hi LSF, oh fuck. You're gonna get me fucking banned. And I think it's pretty clear there's a context to what I'm saying, but maybe not. Do post it on LSF though. Let's go, you know? Let's get me my 15 minutes of fame. Anyways, while there was widespread anti-Semitism in Eastern Europe in general, it is important to note that a lot of the pogroms that happened under German occupation were instigated or fabricated. I wasn't thinking of pogroms. I was thinking of collaboration. That's what I was thinking of. It was to sell the myth of Nazi Germany helping those countries to liberate themselves from the Jews. Okay, I understand that. But to Turnit and I, we were both talking about collaboration, not the pogroms, you know. But that's good to know. I wasn't aware of the fact that like Nazi propaganda was actually vehiculating this idea. That's interesting.
As much as people often say, and there are neo-Nazis in the military. Again, not as much as people say, but still far too much. However, that is not some reason to side with Russia in them annexing Ukraine. You know, we're not exactly talking about a fucking bastion of fucking communism in Russia. We're talking about Vladimir fucking Putin, who legalized domestic violence, who says that gay people don't exist in Russia. We're talking about Vladimir Putin, who has his own Nazi problem, whose number one mercenary proxy, the Wagner Group, is a bunch of fucking Nazis themselves. They are the new Rhodesian / South African mercenaries all over Africa, all over Syria. You have neo-Nazi mercenaries backed by the Russian state. You definitely should not be supporting the Russians. What you should be supporting are the non-reactionary elements in Ukraine, however many there may be, in maintaining their independence, in fighting against the neo-Nazi problem that they have, and against the Russian irredentism problem that they're also dealing with. At least theoretically they're dealing with. I don't think that Russia is going to push any more claims against Ukraine anytime soon. But, you know, anything's possible, but there's no evidence.
Okay, this whole conclusion, honestly, there are things I disagreed with. There are things I agreed with in this video. This whole conclusion is really fucking based. I want to say it. What Empanada just said, wholeheartedly agree.
At all, aside from the US government making zero evidence claims. The best scenario here is there are no sanctions on anyone, okay? No sanctions on anyone, no military action at all, and the US gets the fuck out of Ukraine, but that's obviously not going to happen, unfortunately. Ukraine is practically certain to just continue to be dominated as a neoliberal puppet state, indebted to the IMF for all eternity, getting rid of all of its subsidies, all of its workers' rights, whatever little may remain, on the orders of the US and the EU. You want a solution to this problem? You can't bring your neoliberal...
Now, this part I don't... Yeah. There are problems with IMF loans and shit, but yeah.
Puppet state into NATO for one. That's obviously something that Russia has a big problem with.
There's
and
a lot
NATO,
to unpack
by the way,
there.
Is another fucking... It's an imperialist bloc. It's always been an imperialist bloc. It was founded as an imperialist bloc. So get the fuck out of here with NATO is not imperialist. Shut the fuck up. NATO is essentially a military alliance of the world's biggest imperialist bloc, which is the Western bloc. Obviously, it's imperialist. They also say it's like a defensive alliance. Defensive against what?
Alfonso
NATO invaded
Berg,
Afghanistan. Nice defense there, you fucking
disagree.
moron. Yeah, NATO just turned from an anti-USSR imperialist alliance into a means of competing for geopolitical hegemony against Russia and China. The only possible solution here, if we just look at this from like a liberal geopolitical view, is that the Western bloc stops trying to bring Ukraine into NATO and the EU. Not gonna fucking happen. If it happens, you're gonna have very fucking bad problems with Russia. You know, if you talk about being a pragmatist and you think that Ukraine joining NATO and the EU is a good idea, you're not a pragmatist, you're a fucking ideologue, because nothing about that is pragmatic. That would be a fucking disaster.
I don't disagree with that.
Another thing is that public opinion of Western Ukrainians especially has been completely manipulated by Western propaganda for decades now. So to be like, oh, we need to give them self-determination, just like have them fucking vote on like joining the EU or whatever today. You know, when you manipulate the populace
You're
for
judging on
decades,
the stream of
obviously they're going
consciousness
to give you
stream.
the
Keep that in
desired
mind.
result.
Sure.
That's what the US and
Yeah.
the EU have done.
I know.
So there's no such thing as like an untainted self-determination or whatever in any of these places. Anywhere in the world, really. Read Manufacturing Consent. You call yourself anarchists who love Chomsky, but you never do it. The solution here is for both sides to back the fuck off. The real only solution here, like the only thing that could possibly work decently for Ukraine is
Victor
to play
Orban
both
is gonna
sides.
save
At least,
Europe,
obviously,
yeah.
Ukraine doesn't
Oh
really
my
have much
fucking
leverage to
God.
sort of play both sides, but to like kowtow to both, to balance them both. It's the only possible way that
Victor
it
Orban is fucking
has
cringe.
any sort of chance of maintaining its independence, at least in a liberal geopolitical framework. What Ukraine should do is have a communist revolution. This is the same thing that essentially every country in the world has to do now. Every country in the world that is not just a straight up compromised part of the US geopolitical bloc, or sometimes the Russian or Chinese geopolitical bloc, there's very few of those, needs to just play the US and Russia off each other to balance between them. Not just the US and Russia, US, Russia, and
What does
especially
that have to
China.
do with the communist
Russia is far
revolution,
less
though?
important
Like-
than China in these terms. But you certainly should not be supporting any US imperialism. There's no such thing as a good US intervention. There's no such thing as a non-imperialist sanctioning, a non-imperialist sending troops. You fucking crazy people. And there's certainly no such thing as a non-imperialist US empire which controls the entire global financial system, the global reserve currency, essentially all global banking. Every country in the world has to bank within the US.
He needs to
And a
stop
lesser
pointing at the
extent,
camera. It
UK
really
and EU.
fucks with his
Every country.
autofocus.
A country that has proven time and time again that if you defy its desire to control your economy, to dictate your economic policy, in even the most milquetoast, like social democratic way, it's going to try to coup you. It's going to try to rig your elections. If that doesn't work, it's going to try to starve you with sanctions. If that doesn't work, it's going to invade you and murder millions of people. Like, you cannot think that that country should play world police against anyone. No one. Unless you're fucking insane. None of those people who say that shit would ever be like, the US backed a coup in Bolivia? Well, China.
You should turn off autofocus when filming such videos.
China,
yeah.
Sanction Bolivia and starve its people now. Because they're not like applying this in what they say like a harm reduction utilitarian way.
He should just turn off autofocus.
They're just partisans for US
Simply,
empire.
like when you're streaming, look. I'm streaming right now. If I had like an actual camera with a lens and everything, I would just I would use autofocus most of the time. But at some point I could just like, I know I'm almost always gonna sit at this like this like range of distance from the camera, so I can just have a fixed focus. Anyways, can't believe how hard Twitch sabotages their own embeds. It's terrible. Twitch is fucking terrible with that. If you want, you can watch me on YouTube if you prefer. You can just embed the YouTube stream. Oh, from starting at 160p to dropping to low quality when set on auto. Yeah, auto is terrible. You need to like set it up. It's the first thing I always do when I open a Twitch stream, but that doesn't matter whether it's embedded or not. It does it on the website too. I just, it was never a shoot. It's 100% planned. You think so? I don't know. I always just fucking set it to the maximum quality, the source. Both sides just big the fuck out. Honestly, I was saying that earlier. That would be ideal if both sides actually respect Ukraine's self-determination and borders. That would be ideal. If no one fucking, if both sides stop intervening and in Ukraine, but that's not going to happen. I agree with Empanada, that would be ideal. I do also think that that's just not realistic. The same way he says it's not. It's kind of ironic, but I admit, like, that's my bias. Then there's his bias. It's kind of ironic that I've been saying, like, yeah, we could be militant here to make it so the US and Western influences fuck off, but then that just means that the Russian influence will dominate, right? And then what Empanada was saying was like, yeah, if you live in Russia, you can like fight so Russia fucks off. But then you know, it's never going to happen that the US will fuck off. And it's like neither of those things are going to happen in the end. Like this idea that one side is more likely to stop fucking with countries where it perceives its interest than another is just ideological. I have to concede that. Also, someone posted a meme earlier that I have to share. Imagine if your prime minister looked like this. Dude, I want to coom to your country. You know, I want to coom and be there. Is this the Finnish prime minister? I think, yeah. The cat's ears and the tail are obviously added, and the neck thingy, you know. But dude, this is what politics should look like. Let's all agree on that. Cat girls, rise up.
It's that simple. They don't believe in this thing where you can have like a limited good intervention. They just believe in the USA doing imperialism. If you care,
yeah, we can always boycott the Winter Olympics. That'll stop genocide. Oh yeah, dude. You know what the solution to this is? We should do another Olympics in Russia and then boycott them. That'll teach them. Yeah, that's a good plan.
Fucking clamoring over a
the Olympics really
bogus
matter.
narrative that Russia wants to invade Ukraine based on nothing but troops amassing on the border, which has happened every year for the past like 4 or 5 years. You should be worried about US sanctions on Venezuela, which are currently starving thousands of children.
The indirect economic drain. Unironically, oh my god, that's the big brain sanction. Instead of sanctions, make the same country host the Olympics every year. Fucking ruin the country. You're gonna destroy them. Make them build like 20 fucking useless arenas and shit every year. Every 4 years. Oh my god, what a big brain. Condom shortages everywhere. What a big brain policy.
Result of US sanctions on Afghanistan. You should be worrying about the continued war on Yemen, still being carried out with US diplomatic
I can't go to Yemen. I'm an analyst.
500,000 plus people have died there. More will die. Where's your concern? It's not there because these narratives, these far more immediate problems that the world is facing right now are inconvenient for the geopolitical power that you support, the USA. Because the USA is the one that is doing those things. So you have to fucking drum up this idea of a Russian invasion of Ukraine. Because you're fundamentally just compromised with the USA. You do not give a single
Chinchilla
about human beings.
Don't you dare steal that take. I'm gonna repeat that take on Tuesday for the Lib Praxis, okay? If we're talking about the Olympics, I'm throwing that one in at some point. Honey, it's time for your daily hosting of the Olympic Games. Yes, dear.
Anywhere else in the world, it's all just a cynical geopolitical game. That's the fucking Ukraine video.
All right. Honestly, that was a pretty good video. There was a lot of I disagree with like a lot of the a lot of stuff in the video, but he makes a lot of good points. Like Turnit said, it's like it's a live recording. I don't know. There was some good shit in here. I'm actually pleasantly surprised. I was expecting a lot worse. I'm saying that to be fair. Like I'm kind of like pushing out of my mind the whole like neoliberal physical etc etc. This vid and the resulting discussion changed your opinion on like 3 things. Well, Crimea, the fact that the Crimean people, the idea that the Crimean people were against annexation, right? My mind got changed on that. What was the other thing, or what were the other two things? Fuck off. I learned about the call, the recorded call, where the US was basically setting up. One is like 3 things. I mean, my fundamental opinion on what should happen hasn't really changed, like, at all. And my opinion on whether there's going to be a war or not hasn't really changed at all after watching it. But sure. I'm just a liberal, imperial, physical individual. Yeah. Now this is what happens when you do sanctions. You kill the workers.
Hello, Ron, and welcome back to another episode of Beating Grandmaster with Stupid Stuff. Today, we will try to kill our opponent by destroying their economy. I think the...
Okay, that's going to be in my rap, yeah. One is like 3 things. Okay, I don't understand what you're saying. Okay, do we have anything else? Okay, we've read the transcript of the leaked Nuland Piat call. Oh yeah, someone linked me this video. What a Russian assault on Ukraine would look like. I guess we can check this one out while we're at it.
Sea coast is only about 750 kilometers to the Caspian Sea. A professional military could move across that distance in a day or 2. Doing so would result in a land bridge that cuts the Russian heartland from the North Caucasus, paralyzing the Russian state. The final element that gives urgency to the Ukrainian crisis is timing. Kiev is buying strategic arms left and right. Firstly, it has a growing stockpile of anti-tank missiles, supplied mainly by the United States and the United Kingdom. Secondly, Ukraine has also established licensed facilities to produce Turkish combat drones, which have proved deadly effective against Russian weaponry. And thirdly, Ukraine is looking to develop a missile program of its own, one that can threaten the Russian heartland in the same way Russia threatens the Ukrainian heartland. In time, whether it's 5 years or 10 years, the proliferation of strategic weapons will make invading Ukraine exceedingly costly. The country will gradually be better equipped to defend itself and harbor weapons to strike into Russian territory. The longer Russia waits, the longer it puts off an invasion, the stronger Ukraine gets and the costlier Russia's battle plans become. So, as grim as it sounds, it's better to act quickly than to hesitate until the time of action is past. How the Russian leadership will proceed is anyone's guess. The threat, however, is real, in both political and geographic terms, as well as in timing.
Значит, если на территории Украины возникнут комплексы какие-то ударные, подлетное время до Москвы будет, значит, там 7-10, а в случае размещения гиперзвукового оружия 5 минут.
Should the Kremlin decide to take its chances and attack Ukraine, there are a few strategies to go for. The most credible battle plan comes from the alleged CIA interception of Russian military communications in early 2021. While
it's already extremely costly to occupy Ukraine, Russia doesn't want to invade. Dumb take. Caspian is being dead wrong here.
The contents of the interception remain classified, NATO officials.
Yeah, but the video is called "What a Russian Assault on Ukraine Would Look Like." It's like he's not saying it's, well, now he was kind of saying it was going to happen, which was a bit weird. But if I understand correctly, the premise of the video is not whether it's going to happen, but just if it happens, what it would look like, right?
To the German newspaper Bild summed up the Russian plan as follows. Should war commence,
wait,
the Russian
he cited
army...
Bild, where we were talking about it. Bild is the fucking shit rag we were talking about earlier. Oh no. Anyways. Oh no. That's the source, guys.
Could strike from Donbass in the east, Belarus in the north, and Crimea in the south. The assault would come in 3 distinct phases, thereby allowing breathing room for diplomatic concessions. After taking a specific region, and if negotiations fail, the Russian army could move on to the next target and so on until Kiev rebukes.
You'd probably like Blinkov's Battleground video on this better, way more commie focused. How is a video on military strategy commie or capitalist or whatever focused? It's military strategy. It's not. It doesn't have anything to do with being like what the fuck.
And Moscow's political objective is met. Either way, the first phase is likely to focus on southern Ukraine. Russian tanks and troops coming from Crimea.
You can't have subs yet. No, I haven't. Yo, yeah, have you watched it already? No, I haven't. If you think it's a good video, I'll check it out. I don't have a problem with that. It's just I don't understand the commie-focused statement when we're like, if it's the same kind of video that's like about military strategy, then military strategy is not ideological, right? I mean, it can be if it's like if we're getting into like how much you bomb civilians or not. But anyways. You can't have subs yet. Yeah, I haven't. I'm still thinking about whether to go affiliate or not. I think I will. Maybe like at the end of this week or something. Like this weekend, I'll maybe sign the contract. We will invade them from the east and seize their means of production. Yeah, it's crazy. Really? What for? Wait, what are you talking about, reader? Military strategy is not political. Wowzers, dowsers. Yeah. Diplomacy is political, but military strategy. It depends. I guess the military goals are set by political. It's linked, of course. The military goals are set by politics. So, like the objectives are set by politics. Sure, but if we're talking like invading a country, if we're talking about invasion of a country, then that is a generic goal, right? Just wanted to warn you of this guy, very pro-NATO, anti-Russia. He's also weirdly connected to NATO think tanks and mentioned in WikiLeaks. Okay. Russia does not need more territory. Yeah, they don't really need more territory.
A Russian amphibious landing operation would cut Ukraine off from the Black Sea while strengthening the supply lines going into Crimea. Interestingly, 6 Russian amphibious ships departed the Baltic Sea in mid-January, heading towards the Atlantic Ocean. It is believed their destination is the Black Sea, which makes an amphibious assault all the more feasible. Eventually, though, the Russians would want to join their forces north of Odessa and then advance as far as Transnistria, a Russian-backed separatist region legally part of Moldova. At the same time, still in Phase 1, Russian special forces would infiltrate the southern portion of the Dnieper River. Their mission would be to disrupt Ukrainian logistics going across the river. Russia's vast artillery forces in Crimea would coordinate their attacks with the special forces on the ground, thereby tying up Ukrainian forces. Likewise, from the east in Donbass, Russian troops backed by the Air Force would take a chunk of eastern Ukraine and then take the cities of Dnipro and Zaporozhye by the Dnieper River. From there, the Russians would be free to advance towards Crimea and form a continuous land bridge going from Donbass to Transnistria.
Wouldn't the Ukrainians fight back? I feel like he's just drawing a bunch of arrows and like, okay, this is like, they're gonna, just march through Ukraine. Beankovs is from the perspective of somebody who favors Russia. Apart from aviation, he has bearable takes. Okay, interesting. Oh yeah, well yeah, yeah, that I understand. Also, I guess what I also don't understand, like, if you say commie, that doesn't make me think of Russia. Russia is not communist. It's not even close, right? But I get what you mean now, yeah.
As soon as southern Ukraine comes under Russian control, the Kremlin would start dictating terms for a political surrender. If that doesn't work, it's on to Phase 2. Coming from the northeast, Russian mechanized infantry would surround Ukraine's second largest city, Kharkiv. Backed by the Air Force, the Russian army would advance on Poltava and anchor by the Dnieper. Kharkiv and Poltava would be encircled, gas, electricity, and food supplies would be cut off. A few weeks into the siege, the cities would likely capitulate. In the second phase, Russia would have taken much of Ukrainian territories east of the Dnieper. The second round of negotiations would start, and if these fail as well, Russia would launch Phase 3 of its plan. In this final push, Russian troops would seek to take a chunk of western Ukraine, but crossing the Dnieper might get tricky. The safest way to cross the river is not to cross it, but to move from Belarus into western Ukraine. In December last year, President Lukashenko stated that...
Okay. And from there, the Russians will go up the river to the French and go and claim your mom. Yeah. Ukraine will be divided into 3 parts. Oh, I saw that map, yeah, alleging that Ukraine might be divided into parts. Commie is when Russia, and the more Russian, the more communist, yes. Wow, you're still here? Yeah, it's how long has... Oh, right, the stream got interrupted a couple times. Yeah, I guess it's a pretty long stream today. It's tanky then, not commie. Country ball analysis when... Yeah, we need that. Okay, let me look up the... who was that? Binkov's Battleground. Let's see, look up his idea on what might happen. What might happen if Russia does attack Ukraine?
As Russia has made it clear, The threat of Ukraine seeing some sort of military action on its territory is not a mere fantasy. But given that the US and the UK explicitly stated they would not send its own troops into the fight, Russia knows it would be fighting basically
Please, no
just
strategic
Ukrainian
battle
military if it invades.
analysis? Wait, what are you talking about?
If the invasion does happen, it may go several ways. This
I
video
hate battle
presents
analysis.
one of the more likely courses of events in the first few days, weeks and months. Attack would be quite swift initially. Ukrainian leadership doesn't seem to be preemptively mobilizing its population, which means all those Ukrainian reservist troops would start to get mobilized only after Russia commences its attack. The war would be destined to become a very bloody affair.
Wait, I would have thought that Ukraine's battle readiness would be a bit better. Anyways. Okay, the puppet thing is new, what the fuck? Eastern part is Russian, people of that region are not Ukrainians. It's a bit more complicated than that, but yeah, they're very close to Russia, yes. The whole issue is occupying Ukraine, not the invasion itself. Well, yes, but I mean, those videos are just like if you're like really into war and history, like military history, those videos are for you, right? Those videos are going to describe like strategies for invasion, stuff like that. They aren't like about the practicalities of this stuff. Ukraine is broke as fuck. They can't field and maintain a competent military, unfortunately. See, the weird thing is, what I was reading earlier, because Empanada talked about it, was that Ukraine military size, what was it? Was 200 armed forces of Ukraine. Following hostilities with Russia, Ukraine increased the size of its armed forces to 204,000 soldiers, which is a fucking lot. Now, obviously, if that is not, if they're not properly mobilized, that's another thing, but those are active soldiers, right? Those are professional soldiers. They have a professional military. Ukraine's army has been reformed after Crimea, yeah, and they have new equipment, and they're getting new equipment, right? What the other guy Caspian was saying is true. They're being equipped actively by their own government and by various allies. I think from an air superiority perspective, Russia could cripple their entire air force in days. That would, that would probably be a big problem. Yes, Russia definitely has a very large and competent air force. I don't know. Maybe if Ukraine acquires enough like ground to air defenses, they could actually defend their airspace. But I don't know. I'm not a fucking military buff. I don't have like a clear idea on how much they would need to be able to defend themselves. Anyways. Oh, this is the Poland ball version. Okay, that's what we needed. Finally, the analysis that this stream required. I think the focus should be on guerrilla warfare after they get occupied. That would be terrible, though. You know, like like they have to actively resist. They have to make the war as costly as possible in the first hand, as a deterrent. And then sure, if they lose the war, then whoever wants to still fight for it, they will go be guerrillas in the Ukrainian jungles. Wait, is this just... Oh, this is just like random headlines. Looking for a video more up to your speed, huh? Yeah. What the fuck is going on in this video? This makes no fucking sense. Best analysis so far. Like, okay, okay, we're supposed to like read the headlines. This is boring. I'm sorry. I'm a streamer, dude. It's fan fiction. Oh no, I understand that, but I'm a streamer. I need better content than this. We can't look at like a janky animation of like country balls wielding AKs at each other and read the news headlines. We deserve better. Epic. It's fucking terrible. Yeah. It's fucking terrible. What is Brazil going to do? We'll never know. Alright, time to get my YouTube restream DMCA'd.
I feel vulnerable every day. When I'm out on patrol or just walking my beat, it feels like a threatening situation could erupt at any minute. As a police officer, I constantly live in fear that I might be filmed brutalizing a civilian. Just yesterday, I pull over a black couple, and I kept thinking, what if I escalate the situation and they pull a phone on me and the footage lands on YouTube? Something like that could end a career in seconds. It's something you know from the time you're a cadet. The slightest civil rights infraction in front of anyone who's looking, and the next thing you know, you're surrounded by cameras and trending on Twitter. No cop should have to worry about that. Practically every precinct I know has somebody serving desk duty, just for acting on deeply rooted prejudices when somebody had a recording device on them. It happened to my partner, and it even happened to our own captain. One day, he's just kicking an unarmed pedestrian in the ribs when all of a sudden people with cameras are everywhere, and then they just start shooting what he was doing, all 6 minutes of it. I can't help but think sometimes that could have been me ending up at that desk job. You never know which day of total impunity will be your last, but for a cop, that's just our daily reality.
Wow. I'm glad we got this we heard this fuck. God, I hate it. The worst part of knowing several languages is when you know what you want to say and then the word comes into your brain and it's in the wrong language. It's so infuriating. Testimony. I'm so glad we got this testimony. We got to hear that. That was very, very important. All right, what else was I sent? Oh yeah, the Sunday read, How AI Conquered Poker. That's a podcast. I mean, we can listen to it. Maybe not now, because I actually don't. Well, I'll hold on to it. Maybe tomorrow or something. You ever seen the video of Russians faking them being a Ukraine separatist, burning a French flag, thinking it was a Dutch flag, and then the flag didn't burn due to ear regulation? I haven't seen that. Don't do it now. Yeah, I'm not gonna do it now. I'll do it on stream. I think I'll probably like chill and play Loop Hero or something while listening to the podcast. Uttar Pradesh Assembly Elections 2020. Oh, I should change the stream title. We're back to world news. I sent it. Maybe listen on your own time. It's 30 minutes. Could be good for stream as well, but it's 30 minutes. Yeah. Chillin world news wide memes. Yeah, played during the AoE4 gameplay. You'll surely do. I was actually thinking of playing, but then we dove deep into Ukraine. Uttar Pradesh Assembly Elections 2022. The Indian polls everyone is watching. Over the next month, elections will be held in 5 Indian states, but all eyes are on Uttar Pradesh. As the northern Indian state of Uttar Pradesh begins a 7-phase election later this week to choose a new government, the BBC's Geeta Pandey in Delhi explains why these polls matter. Over the next month, elections will be held in 5 Indian states, but all eyes are on the key battleground of Uttar Pradesh. Commonly known by its initials UP, the state is India's most populous, with an estimated 240 million people. If it were a separate country, UP would be the 5th largest by population in the world, after China, India, the United States, and Indonesia, and larger than Pakistan or Brazil. The state sends the largest number of MPs, 80, to India's parliament, and it is often said that the party that wins the state ends up ruling the country. Several prime ministers, including India's first PM, Jawaharlal Nehru, have come from here. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who is from the western gate of Gujarat, also chose to make his parliamentary debut from the state in the 2014 general election when he stood in Varanasi. In 2019, he was re-elected from there. And voters in the state can easily claim the credit for his Bharatiya Janata Party's sweep of the last two general elections. In 2014, the party won 71 seats there. In 2019, it got 62. It was a video made by Russian troll farms because we had a referendum in the Netherlands about alignment with Ukraine, and Russia doesn't want that, so they thought burning a Dutch flag would help. Okay. Who are the main players? Since the late 1990s, state politics have been dominated by the regional Samajwadi Party and Bahujan Samaj Party. As the two alternated in power, the Congress and the BJP were pushed to the margins. But in 2017, the BJP won a thumping majority, winning 312 of the 403 state assembly seats and nearly 40% of the popular vote, riding on the popularity and charisma of Prime Minister Modi. The party chose Yogi Adityanath, a highly polarizing saffron-robed Hindu monk turned politician known for his divisive views, as the chief minister, and he's hoping for an encore when the votes are counted on 10th March. I want to get like an idea of who, where those people are on the political axis, though. Since I'm unfamiliar with Indian politics, we're going to need to do a bit of Googling here, right? So, Bahujan Samaj Party. Let's see, like, roughly where they align in the Overton window, right? Is a national level political party in India that was formed to represent the Bahujans, literally means community and majority, referring to scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and other backward classes, along with religious minorities. The party claims to be inspired by the philosophy of Gautama Buddha, etc., etc. Views. They believe in social transformation and economic emancipation of the Bahujan Samaj. The Bahujan Samaj signifies the Bahujans as the scheduled caste, the scheduled tribes, and other backward castes. Ambedkar, a proponent of Bahujan rights, is their important ideological inspiration. BSP also speaks in favor of religious minorities. The party claims not to be prejudiced against upper caste Hindus. In 2008, while addressing the audience, Mayawati said, "Our policies and ideology are not against any particular caste or religion. If we were anti-upper caste, we would not have given tickets to candidates from upper castes to contest religions." Modi can be depicted as a proto-fascist. Modi is a Hindutva fascist, also called Butcher of Gujarat, for his inaction against genocides, during genocides against Muslims. Right, that was my impression, or when I vaguely recall stuff about that, that he was like anti-Muslim. Are there any people that really think that Russia wants to encroach on Ukraine? Even the Ukrainians just use that idea to escape to Europe. They lied to receive the red card. I wouldn't say they lied to receive the red card. Didn't you see that the Ukrainian president was telling Biden to chill with the war hawkish communication, for example? There was an article about it last week or 2 weeks ago. He was pleading like the US to like chill on the whole Russia's going to war thing. So I wouldn't say they're instrumentalizing it when they're asking people to stop doing it. Oh wait, I just looked at the BSP. Okay, so this is the BSP, Bahujan Samaj Party. But the BJP, that's the Modi one. The BJP. What was the full name? Bharatiya Janata Party. Oh. The official ideology of the BJP is integral humanism. Blah, 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 blah. Is cultural nationalism favoring Indian culture over westernization. However, scholars and political analysts have called their Hindutva ideology an attempt to redefine India and recast it as a Hindu country to the exclusion of other religions, making it a Hindu nationalist party in a general sense. The BJP has slightly moderated its stance after the NDA was formed in 1998, according to them. Anyways, okay. Lending him a helping hand is Mr. Modi, who has made nearly a dozen trips to the state in recent months, addressing gatherings and exhorting voters to give the BJP another chance. In the past year, though, the party has lost a lot of ground over contentious farm laws, which the government scrapped after a year of protests by farmers, and the state governments— oh yeah, I remember the protests by farmers. Are you researching Indian politics? Because you know I want to talk about in the future on Lib Praxis. Well, we would need to look up like the dates, but we could do we sure could do like a dive into the Indian elections as well. I would be down for that. No, I was just like looking. I was just looking at the world news, honestly, for today's stream, and this is one of the articles I picked out because you know, India is really important, and it's an interesting country. In the past year, though, the party has lost a lot of ground. We have farm laws and the state government's disastrous handling of the COVID-19 pandemic last year. Hundreds of bodies, believed to be of people who lost their lives to coronavirus, turned up in the Ganges River. And although the government has been appreciated for providing free rations during the pandemic, there is discontent over a lack of jobs among young people and runaway inflation. At election rallies, though, Mr. Adityanath, 49, has been claiming to have created plenty of jobs, boosted the economy, and improved law and order in the state. He's also been using anti-Muslim rhetoric to win Hindu votes. Mr. Adityanath's main challenger is the Samajwadi Party, led by 48-year-old Akhilesh Yadav, a former chief minister ousted by the BJP in 2017. Mr. Yadav has been working hard to wrest power from the BJP, and he's promised free electricity to all households, pensions for poor women, and interest-free loans to farmers if he's voted into power. His chances have brightened after he stitched up alliances with a number of smaller regional parties. Damn, that's some big promises. Hey, can you actually deliver that in India? I mean, interest-free loans, sure. Like subsidies, no pensions, sure. But free electricity and all the other things—that's a lot. That's going to be expensive. That I'm a bit sus. Anyways, the BSP, led by Dalit, formerly Untouchables icon Miss Mayawati, is also seeking a comeback, but not many are willing to bet on her. The four-time state chief minister, who lost power in 2012, is popular among her community, but during her earlier stints, she was criticized for spending millions of dollars to build statues of herself and other Dalit icons. Oh no. Out of power now for a decade, she has been pushed to the sidelines and has maintained a low profile this election season. A host of smaller parties are also in the fray, and so is the Congress, India's main opposition party. Led by Priyanka Gandhi, the Congress has grabbed attention with her energetic campaign. She has made news by visiting families of rape victims and police atrocities, and her focus on female voters has made headlines. Even as her personal stock remains high, her campaign is hobbled by lack of support on the ground. I saw him in Electrical and he vented. Super sus. Good one. Yeah, that's a big problem in India too. Like women's rights are pretty terrible there. Because of its sheer size and numbers, Uttar Pradesh is a crucial battleground, and for the parties in the fray, these elections are being seen as a do-or-die battle. No party has won a second term here since 1989, so the BJP and Mr. Adityanath will be keen to break that jinx. The election result will also be seen as a referendum on his politics of Hindu nationalism. For Mr. Modi, too, the elections are significant, as UP is seen as a test run before the 2024 general elections, and if the BJP loses there, it will be seen as a sign that the pull of the party and the Prime Minister are on the decline. A victory for Akhilesh Yadav is crucial, as another term out of power is likely to weaken his position as the leader of his party. A loss will also likely put an end to the alliances he's forged with smaller regional groups. A win is absolutely essential for Ms. Mayawati, who has spent the past 10 years in the political wilderness. Analysts say if she loses this time too, she may never be able to bounce back. The Congress, analysts say, is not really playing for a win this time, but is hoping that all the hard work put in by Priyanka Gandhi will help revive the party and help it build for a substantial role in the future. Yeah, this is a problem I have with French politics as well. It's when you have people who stay in power in parties that just never, ever leave the party. Like, at some point, you have to acknowledge that if you're not successful, that's maybe not a problem with the ideology of the party. Maybe it's a problem with who is leading the party. I have that issue with several French parties personally. Specifically, I'm thinking in French politics. I'm specifically thinking of Mélenchon. Like his party, La France Insoumise, it presented itself as the actual socialist alternative to the Socialist Party for quite a long time, and it was very promising. But Mélenchon is just no longer really the leader that the party needs, I think. He just doesn't have the popularity, and there are controversies surrounding him. Like, at some point, you have to accept that you need to pass it on to someone else. Maybe come back later or have a bit of a less important role in the party. Indian politics has a great issue with parties where families get in power. I see. Dynasties, right? Nepotism is big when it comes to Indian politics. I see. How do the numbers look? With 403 seats up for grabs, thousands of contestants are in the fray, fighting for a share of the pie. More than 150 million voters will be casting their votes at 174,351 polling centers during the 7 phases of voting spread over a month. Thousands of police and paramilitary troops are being deployed to ensure the elections are free and fair. But despite its political significance, UP remains one of India's least developed states and home to the largest numbers of poor people in the country. According to the recently released first-ever multidimensional poverty index, 37.79% of the state's population lives in poverty, more than 44% are deprived of nutrition, and millions still have no access to toilets. For the voters, the only way to express themselves is through their vote, and during elections they come out in large numbers to use it, often against those in power. Yeah, speaking of nepotism, like I can't help but think of the dynasties in US politics as well, you know, like the Kennedys, the Bushes, the Clintons. Like, oh boy. It's a common thing in general. Even when it's not explicit nepotism, like that shit still happens just out of outright like class dynamics. Like Duck Dynasty. Wait, what are you talking about? Fuck, Nept meddling with Indian politics. Nepotism in my Indian politics. A good one. All right. Look, everyone. It got a bit heated at certain moments. I'm sorry for that. But I enjoyed today's stream. I enjoyed my stay. Okay, XQCL. So I'm gonna go chill out with Ina. I wish you there are other things you need to be sorry for. Oh shit. I wish you a good rest of your time. Evening, day, morning, whatever time it is. I just got here, but goodbye. Oh shit. May have gotten heated, but you did look at the views. But did you look at the views? Yeah. Yeah, the view count was pretty good. Yeah, see you, Nusanov. I'll stream tomorrow. Turnit, wait, before I leave, Turnit, are we still up for the book review tomorrow? If you're still here. He could have doubled that if he just talked about sex. Dude, I actually almost derailed myself. I wanted to talk about pegging at some point. But I controlled myself. I can? All right. Is there like a specific time you wanna do it? What book? We were thinking of making me doing like a book club, like a book discussion thing on stream. And for this week, we were talking about doing Camus' The Stranger. That being said, yeah, we need to. Oh yeah, we talked about it. I should advertise it on stream beforehand, so to give people time to read along as well, if they haven't read it and they want to participate in the discussion. I have a real life politics thing at 8. Then maybe do you want to do it like start doing it next week instead? That way I'll mention it now. I'll mention it tomorrow and the rest of the week while I stream. So if people wanna read along, then they could read as well. I could later. I could later as well. But I'm just proposing that so like if anyone else wants, it's a short book. So like if you a week is honestly easy peasy to read it. Like if anyone wants to read along, and I highly endorse it. Camus' Stranger is one of the most beautiful books I've read in my entire life. Unironically, like I love it personally. So yeah, if you wanna check it out, and then next week on Wednesday with Tyrannid, we'll do like a book club discussion panel thing, right? Is there a post on Discord about it? No, but you're right. I'll do it right now so I don't forget. Let me hop onto the Discord. Announcements. Next week, discussing next Wednesday. Next week's Wednesday, discussing Camus' Stranger on stream with, I'm gonna add Tyrannid. With Tyrannid. Please read it too if you wanna. If you want. There you go. I can't read the book, I'm an analyst. Oh yeah, I wanted to play that clip because we said that meme so many times. I need to play it before leaving. Oh god. Oops.
I can't go to Yemen. I'm an analyst. Get on the plane.
I need like a 10-hour loop of this shit. No one made a 10-hour loop of this? Wow. Wow. How does that not exist? I'm only human. Yeah.
I can't go to Yemen. I'm an analyst. Get on the plane. I'm only human.
That is so fucking dumb. It's such a bad show. Okay. Can you put two... Anyways. The official sign that the meme is not that good. Well, fair enough. Anyways. Thanks for watching. Thanks for participating. And yeah, see you tomorrow. Bye-bye. Love you.